Chapter 2088. Hand over the ruler's scepter, Goddess said. Only the king has the right to use it. What if we refuse? Don't force me to use violence. Otherwise you'll look bad. Goddess looked at Ruan Faxben coldly. Are you too confident? Or not confident enough? Ruan Faxben looked at Goddess. Or do you think the magic potion you've given us has taken effect? You know? I'm an alchemist. Do you think I don't know you've drugged us? Ruan Faxben said in a mocking tone. That's why I don't understand. If you think you're strong enough, why did you drug us? I thought it could avoid some violence. To be honest, I really don't want to kill you. But things are still developing in the direction we don't want. Don't overestimate yourself. Ruan Faxben's lips curled. At this moment, Xian Li, Moer, Risa and Kalon, who were behind Ruan Faxi, were all ready for battle. Mr. Ruan Faxben, do you really think these kids can beat me? Boom! Suddenly Goddess felt a terrifying impact coming at her from the front. Goddess was sent flying more than 10 meters away, and fell heavily on the ground. If she didn't have a magic protection tool on her, that attack would have taken her life. Fortunately, she had taken many precautions. Fortunately, she had always been cautious. Ruan Faxben looked at Risa. Next time, can you tell me in advance? I still have a lot to say. Sorry, I've always wanted to kill this woman. Risa would never admit that she was jealous of the woman's body. Goddess stood up again, but her face was filled with anger and distortion. You asked for it. Goddess pointed at Ruan Faxben and the others. Kill them. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, there was a huge explosion in the armed army's camp without warning. Many armed personnel were affected, and at the same time, the logistics team was also affected. Clearly, the ammunition of the armed army had exploded. Goddess's expression changed drastically. When did you do this? Our boss always teaches us that we shouldn't have the heart to harm others, but we shouldn't have the heart to defend ourselves. Lisa looked at Goddess with a sweet smile. In fact, they didn't do anything. Lisa could control the temperature difference within a range of 50 meters, and the camp of the armed forces and logistics forces happened to be not far from them. Although Risa could not directly control the extreme temperature difference in the entire area, she could still control the high temperature in a small area. She only needed to raise the temperature within the range of the gunpowder to the ignition point. Even the ignition point of these gunpowder only needed a temperature of 40 to 50 degrees to ignite and detonate. This seemingly harmless girl was actually an extremely violent person. Very well. But do you really think that you can defeat my magic legion? Goddess gritted her teeth in anger, and her face was filled with anger. We don't need to defeat your magic legion directly. It's enough as long as we can kill you. Ruan Faxben had a faint smile on his face. Can you do it? Goddess sneered at Ruan Faxben. I'll give it a try. As soon as Ruan Faxben finished speaking, a black shadow suddenly appeared behind him and attacked him from behind. Be careful. Ding! Kalon instantly blocked the shadow's sneak attack. Ruan Faxben had a faint smile on his face, but he was already cursing in his heart. He was really frightened. He had almost been too arrogant. Fortunately, Kalon reacted in time. And this black shadow was a typical shadow assassin. Since his attack did not succeed, he immediately retreated. Boiling blood. Xian Li did not waste any time, and directly cast a blood curse. The shadow assassin immediately fell to the ground and rolled around, wailing in pain. His body began to emit heat, and his blood was really boiling. Ruan Faxben still stood where he was, but the hand he hid behind him opened a bottle. Green smoke came out of the bottle. The green smoke began to spread in all directions. Oh no! It's magic poison gas. Hold your breath quick. A spiritualist discovered the poison gas that Ruan Faxben had released. Ruan Faxben was an alchemist, and his magic fighting ability was very weak. But this did not mean that he really could not fight back. As an alchemist, he obviously had his own way of fighting. Faxben, since you've been discovered, use it openly. There's no need to hide it, Lisa said unconcerned. She had always looked down on Ruan Faxben's unorthodox methods. Of course, she had to admit that Ruan Faxben's unorthodox methods were very useful in this situation. No matter how arrogant she was, She knew that they could not fight so many spiritualists under normal circumstances. After all, they were just above average. They had not reached the level of the monsters in the supernatural organization. If Gaia, Norma, or Helis were here, they could probably do it. Or Dongye Tianxi, who was holding the demon knife and had a pale face. Of course, there was also the real monster Chen Zhao. Lisa, help me. Ruan Faxben casually tossed a few bottles. Lisa immediately used her ability to heat up the bottles in the air, and then explode. The bottles immediately emitted a large amount of colored gas and dust. The nearby spiritualists immediately collapsed to the ground. They were all too familiar with this kind of chaotic battle. They had practiced in the Tower of Trials for many years, and they had also cooperated with each other. All of this was displayed at this moment. Cough cough. Goddess felt a burning pain in her throat. Suddenly, Goddess felt a chill on her neck. Kalon had already placed a dagger on her neck. Miss Goddess, you better order them to retreat now, Kalon threatened. Otherwise something bad might happen. Before this journey, Kalon might still be a newbie. But now he had evolved into an expert. At least, he was no longer as resistant and panicky about killing as he was the first time. Goddess trembled in anger. They clearly had the absolute advantage, but she, the commander, had lost to a bunch of kids. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 2089. She thought that her defense was perfect enough. However, these people had destroyed her self-defense so easily. And most of them were still children. Her defense had been broken by a group of children. However, Kalon had scratched the skin on Goddess's neck. Goddess was even more furious. She hadn't been hurt for hundreds of years. To put it bluntly, the money she spent on skincare was worth more than Kalon. But today, she had been hurt by a child. However, Goddess was also frightened. Except for Ruan Faxben, they were all children. They didn't know the severity of the situation. Let me go, and pretend that this never happened, Goddess growled. She already regretted her previous cautious actions. She had thought that Ruan Faxben was a talent, and that she might be able to win him over to work for her. So she had never shown any hostility, and even deliberately tried to get close to Ruan Faxben. But the result was the opposite of what she wanted. She had even been humiliated like this. Of course it's okay to let you go, but shouldn't you let your men retreat first? Ruan Faxben said indifferently. But how do I know if you will keep your promise? Well, it seems that we can't come to an agreement. Ruan Faxben said disapprovingly. Kalon, kill Miss Goddess, and then we'll break out ourselves. Goddess panicked. Don't do anything rash, retreat. Retreat, all of you retreat. Under Goddess's order, the Magic Legion and the Armed Legion retreated obediently. Fa Shiban, should we kill this woman now? Otherwise, when she returns, she will definitely hunt us down. Seeing that Goddess's men had all retreated to a distance, Risa suddenly had an evil thought in her mind. Risa had no sense of morality, and she was extremely jealous of Goddess in every aspect. Goddess's hair stood on end. What was wrong with the youngest girl? Why did she feel a strong sense of malice from her? Did she offend her? Or did she have a grudge against her? Forget it. If we kill her, then her men will definitely chase after us crazily. Do you think that if we let her go, she won't send her subordinates to kill us? She knows what's important. Ruan Faxburn glanced at Goddess. Am I right? Humph. Goddess snorted and turned her head away, ignoring Ruan Faxben. But what Ruan Fashi said was indeed what she was thinking. Chasing after them meant that he would have to spend more time. It also meant that her plan was more likely to fail. Therefore, the best way was to complete his own plan first. As for when to chase after them, as long as his plan succeeded, he could do it any time. Okay, let her go. Ruan Faxi made the final decision. Lisa may be the most intelligent of them all. But Lisa couldn't keep her sanity all the time. Ruan Faxi knew better than to seize the moment. Therefore, he was the nominal leader and decision-maker of this team. In the end, Goddess was released. Everyone saw the look of hatred in Goddess's eyes as she left. They knew that the next conflict might not end there. Let's go, Ruan Faxi said. In case that woman brings people to kill us. Didn't you say that she won't chase after us? Nonsense. If we just wait here, it won't be a chase. If it were you, If a mouse that bit you ran in front of you, would you raise your foot and stomp it to death? They hurriedly packed up and set off. They were heading in the same direction as Goddess and her team. They were all heading toward Mount Olympus. Therefore, it was impossible to say that there was no conflict between them. Sooner or later, they would meet each other. When that time came, it would be a life-and-death battle. Farsben, can you guess what that woman's goal is? I can't guess. Ruan shook his head. Doesn't she want the golden apple? Or rather, she wants the golden apple tree. Exionly asked curiously. In her opinion, this should be the most direct. Both the golden apple and the golden apple tree were legendary items. It should be reasonable for Goddess to want the golden apple and the golden apple tree. Why did they think that what Goddess was after was neither of these? Ruan Faxi's team wasn't far from Goddess's team. In fact, they were right behind Goddess's team. After all, Goddess's team had so many people. Moreover, they were heading in the same direction. Therefore, it was almost impossible to completely avoid them. If they walked in front, it might turn into a chase. Therefore, hanging at the back was the best position. It wasn't that Goddess's team didn't have powerful spiritualists. Therefore, no matter how proud Ruan Faxi's team was, they didn't dare to say that they could fight against a team of more than 2,000 people. Previously, they were able to succeed, not only because they were strong. It was also because Goddess hadn't treated them seriously from beginning to end. If Goddess had treated them seriously, their best outcome would have been to retreat in one piece, instead of holding Goddess hostage and leaving easily. Mr. Faxi, I don't understand. Since Goddess doesn't want the golden apple, why can't she really cooperate with us? We've been wary of her from the beginning. If we had been more sincere in the beginning, could we have worked together more closely? There is a type of person who isn't suitable to be an ally. For example, a woman like Goddess. Her desire for control is too strong. Either we submit to her, or we can only be enemies. Is Uncle the same kind of person? Your uncle is much better than her. Although he has a strong desire for control, he's not ambitious, so you don't have to worry about being schemed against by him. At least he won't betray his allies. Uncle is so powerful, yet he can treat his allies sincerely. Why does this woman have such an attitude? It's not a question of who. Ruan Faxi smiled and shook his head. It's a difference in how everyone treats the people around them, and how they do things. From Goddess's point of view, we are the ones who are wrong. In fact, this matter isn't about who is right or wrong. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 2090. When they stood at the foot of Mount Olympus, they realized how magnificent the mountain was. It wasn't a mountain range but a mountain peak. The clouds were halfway up the mountain, and they could only vaguely see its shadow. Look at that side. Exionly suddenly pointed to the side of Mount Olympus. From where they stood, they could see both sides of the mountain. Everyone gasped, because the side of Mount Olympus was completely flat, without any rugged or protrusions. It looked like a piece that had been cut off. This doesn't seem to be the real Mount Olympus, Lisa said. It's more like a part of Mount Olympus or a corner. It's just a part, and it's already so big. How big would the whole thing be? Everyone looked at Mount Olympus in amazement. Standing in front of the mountain, everyone felt how small they were. Suddenly, a cry came from the sky. The cry was very long, and it sounded like someone was approaching them. When they looked up, they saw a person. To be precise, it was a person who had been thrown off the mountain. No one could save him. All Ruan Faxben and the others could do was avoid him. They didn't want to be hit by this person. After the free fall, this person had an intimate contact with the solid ground. Then there was only a mess of flesh and blood. Judging from the torn cloth, it should be one of Goddess's people. There seems to be a battle up there. Everyone looked at each other. What about us? Should we go up and take a look? It feels dangerous. Dangerous, but it must be interesting. Goddess had learned her lesson from last time. Now as long as there was a battle, she would be at the back. And there would be a large number of people around to protect her. Many eagle men appeared in front of them. They had the bodies of humans, but the wings and claws of eagles. They weren't very powerful. They might be able to deal with ordinary people easily, but they weren't strong enough to deal with these heavily armed people and spiritualists. The most troublesome thing was that they lived on the cliffs. When prey entered their range, they would use rocks to throw them down from a high altitude. Or they could just skip the prey at high speed and push them down the mountain. Moreover, their intelligence was not low. They knew that the weapons in the hands of these invaders could pose a threat to them. Therefore, they were at a height that these weapons could not reach. Damn it, these eagle men weren't this hard to deal with last time, Godarus said angrily. Master, these eagle men aren't much smarter than humans except that they haven't developed their own civilization. Our civilization caused them a lot of casualties last time, so it's only normal that they've learned their lesson. Is there any way to get rid of them? Godarus asked. Let's find cover so that they won't be able to do anything, a spiritualist beside Godarus said. The eagle men's two moves to deal with them were throwing stones from the sky and pushing people over. The eagle men, on the other hand, wouldn't be able to throw things high up in the air if they were under cover. Secondly, he couldn't use a sneak attack to push someone away. This was a mountain road, so there were many protruding rocks along the way. It is not difficult to find a lot of cover. However, the eagle men weren't stupid either. After Godarus's team found cover, they stopped attacking. They were not in a hurry. All they had to do was wait. When Godarus's team couldn't wait any longer, they would naturally come out of the cover. After all, they couldn't hide under the cover forever. Godarus, who was hiding under the cover, was in a bad mood. Although they had temporarily averted the crisis, but they were also in trouble now. These eagle men were too vengeful. Even after so many years, they still clearly remembered Godarus's team. What do we do now? We can't buy time with these beasts at all. This was the eagle men's home ground, and although Godarus's team was well prepared, but after all, they couldn't really fight a protracted battle with the eagle men. They couldn't compete with the eagle men in endurance on their home ground. Master, although we are at a disadvantage now, we are not really powerless to fight back. Then what do you think we should do now? Godarus was not good at commanding, so she never intervened in a battle. But this didn't mean that she had a good temper. She was a very controlling person. She didn't like this kind of passive situation. They are smart, but only among animals, Godarus's subordinate said. We still have a lot of high explosives. What do we do exactly? There are a few people in our team who have mastered invisibility magic. Let them carry the explosives and go directly into the eagle men's nest to detonate them. Godarus's eyes lit up. She had to say that this plan was very vicious, but very effective. Looks like they're in trouble, Lisa said gloatingly. They were also hiding under the cover now. Those eagle men couldn't tell friend from foe, or rather, Ruan Faxben and the others were also enemies. Even the few of them would have a hard time dealing with these eagle men, so they also needed to hide under the cover now. However, they were small in number, and their individual strength was relatively strong, so they were still relatively free to move, unless those eagle men attacked them in full force regardless of everything. Otherwise, there was really nothing they could do. Therefore, they could easily gloat over the misfortune of others. Hey, two people came out. I remember those two, they both know invisibility magic. Oh, I see. They want to send these two to blow up the eagle men's nest. A smirk appeared on Lisa's face. It's okay to do bad things, but you'd better be careful, said Ruan Faxben. I can't do bad things even if I want to. This place is too close to them. If they find us, we'll be in big trouble. Lisa was standing under the cover, hundreds of meters away from Godarus's team. Fortunately, there were bunkers and plants to cover them, so their hiding spot was relatively well hidden. Although Lisa had a bad personality, it didn't mean she was reckless. In fact, every move she made was done after careful consideration. No, I mean if it's possible, we should give them a big gift. Why? Lisa looked at Ruan Faxben. This is our only chance to weaken them. I don't want to hide the next time I see that woman. Chapter 2091. The two invisible spiritualists followed the winding mountain road and slowly found their way to the nest of the eagle men. The nest of the eagle men was huge. When they stood in front of the nest, it was as if they were looking at a huge stadium. There were many holes in the cave, and those holes were the eagle men. Each hole was an eagle man. They had no sense of family and would be abandoned by their parents after they were born. They needed to grow wings in a few days and then go hunting with the main group. Otherwise, they would starve to death. If it weren't for the fertility of the eagle men, their breeding method might have caused them to go extinct. Fortunately, the eagle men didn't eat their own kind, and they didn't eat the children of their own kind. We need to find a place to plant the explosives, one of the spiritualists said in a low voice. The two of them were in front of the shadow men's nest. However, the nest was too big. They also didn't know where to place the explosives in order to maximize their power. Lisa had 2 branches on her head, as if such a disguise would work. In fact, the eagle men's vision was thousands of times better than that of humans. Such a disguise was meaningless to the eagle men. However, Lisa's body emitted a smell that could make the eagle men think that she was one of their kind. That was because Lisa had used a potion given by Ruan Faxben. Lisa, that's stupid, Moore said with the communicator. At the same time, they were also observing Lisa's movements with binoculars. Lisa's movements were the most convenient, because she was the only one in the team who could use long-range attacks. Also, Lisa's long-range attacks could control the temperature difference in a small range, even from hundreds of meters away. Moreover, she could sense invisible spiritualists. Like cold-blooded animals, Lisa had heat and heat senses. Spiritualists could only turn invisible, but they couldn't hide their body temperature. That's the ultimate disguise technique, Lisa retorted. Don't copy the president's unfunny jokes on the battlefield. Faxben, Xanli is right next to you. If she tells the president that you said his jokes are unfunny, I think you'll be in big trouble. I take it back. Ruan Faxi decisively admitted defeat and immediately changed the topic. When those 2 people enter the eagle men's nest, detonate the explosives immediately. This will ensure that not too many eagle men are killed. And at the same time, let the eagle men know the danger. At that time, they will definitely come out of their nest and take revenge on Goddess and her team. I know what to do. You don't have to teach me every detail. Riisa, who had a weak sense of morality, knew best what to do to bring the greatest results. The 2 invisible spiritualists thought that they were hidden. In fact, every move they made was under Lisa's eyes. The moment they entered the shadow men's lair, the explosives they were carrying exploded without warning. In an instant, huge flames spread out along with the shockwave. It's a success. Holding the telescope in her hand, she saw flames rushing out of the shadow men's nest halfway up the mountain. It's a pity for those 2 spiritualists. Their sacrifice was worth it. Goddess did not feel it was a pity. She even felt that it was worth it. It was really worth it to pay 2 mediocre spiritualists to solve the big problem in front of them. The flames gradually subsided. Just then, countless eagle men rushed out of the shadow men's lair. Those eagle men, full of anger, rushed toward the bunker where Goddess and her team were hiding. The sky was dark, and there were far more of them than the first time they were attacked. Oh no! Goddess's expression changed dramatically. Those eagle men began to rush under the bunker, regardless of casualties. This was when Goddess's armed army came into play. Their machine guns caused a lot of casualties to the eagle men, but there were too many of these eagle men, and the armed army did not form a perfect front. This caused the power of their firearms to not be used to the fullest. If it was the kind of battle between 2 armies, where the soldiers all relied on each other and formed a defensive front, then guns would play the greatest role. But like this, you hide in one place, I hide in another, unable to effectively protect each other. In this case, if the eagle men attacked from all angles, it would be difficult for the soldiers to resist. And the situation was also developing in this direction. These eagle men were already charging forward regardless of casualties. And the Magic Legion also couldn't exert their combat advantage in the melee. The chaotic scene made it difficult for them to cast a few spells in peace. Except for a few powerful spiritualists, most of the other spiritualists were covering their heads and scurrying away. The team suffered a lot of casualties. Goddess was a little dazed. What do we do? What do we do now? Master, let's go, we can't stay here. The subordinate who had been accompanying Goddess immediately pulled Goddess back. Behind them, Some spiritualists who had fought their way out of the encirclement followed one after another. Everyone was fleeing frantically. The scene was too chaotic. No one could stop this chaos. Goddess saw the eagle men chasing behind her. The spiritualist beside her immediately stopped and released an ice arrow, which scattered into countless smaller ice arrows in midair, instantly killing a dozen eagle men. But there were still more eagle men chasing after them. And the ice spiritualist who was in charge of the rear also died tragically under the hands of the eagle men amid a scream. Goddess was scared out of her wits. Those eagle men had already pounced on her again. Just when Goddess thought she was dead for sure, suddenly, those eagle men stopped and hovered in midair. But they didn't dare to move forward at all. Goddess and those spiritualists who had survived all let out a long sigh of relief. Only then did Goddess realize that they seemed to have entered a building complex. This building complex was full of the aesthetic style of ancient Greece, and the color was also mainly white. The building complex was full of grandeur and magnificence, and at the same time, it exuded a fascinating aura. And in the center of the building complex, there was a towering tree. That towering tree stood in the center just like that. Goddess's entire body and mind trembled. It was actually here. Had she really found it? The Holy Garden. This was the Holy Garden. She didn't expect to really find it. Was that the golden apple tree? This was also the first time Goddess had found the Holy Garden and seen the golden apple tree. Even for Goddess, it was a legend. Goddess couldn't wait to run in through the gate. As for the battle behind her, she was no longer in the mood to pay attention. The thing that he had been dreaming of was in there. Chapter 2092. The walls of the Holy Garden weren't tall. Let's go in first and see what's going on inside. Goddess was surprisingly calm. A spiritualist stepped forward and leaped onto the wall with quick steps. However, the moment he landed on the wall, a screen of light flashed in front of him. Hiss! Half of the spiritualist's body fell to the ground. The screen of light cut his body in half. Before he died, he didn't even have the chance to scream. Before he was sent to the underworld, everyone furrowed their brows. Master, that screen of light should be the glory of Olympus. Blast that curtain of light apart, Goddess ordered. Master, this is the glory of Olympus. Let's try, Goddess said coldly with a grim expression. Let's wait until all of our people are here. If we try now, it'll only be a waste of mana, Goddess's subordinate explained. Goddess thought about it and nodded in agreement. The glory of Olympus was a spell created by the legendary Queen of Heaven Hera. The Holy Garden was under the management of Queen of Heaven Hera, so it was reasonable that the glory of Olympus was here. That was why it was almost impossible for a few spiritualists to break through the glory of Olympus. The glory of Olympus wasn't unbreakable. In history, hundreds of spiritualists had broken the glory of Olympus, as well as thousands of others. So they also had a chance to break the glory of Olympus. But it also depended on who released the glory of Olympus. The glory of Olympus in front of them was definitely a barrier created by Queen of Heaven Hera. Without enough people, it was almost impossible to break it. Attacking now would only be a waste of time and mana. The eagle men didn't chase Goddess's group into the Holy Garden, but the group behind them was still being attacked by the eagle men. The explosion just now had completely enraged them. All the eagle men came out of their nest. One or two more spiritualists managed to break through the eagle men's attack. Everyone's mood sank to the bottom. The eagle men's attack lasted for a few hours. Goddess's group lost more than 1,000 people. The eagle men, on the other hand, had suffered even more casualties, more than 3,000 of them. The remaining eagle men finally left. At this moment, Goddess's group had less than 800 people left. Half of them were spiritualists, and the other half were armed soldiers. Among these people, most of them had injuries of varying degrees. This battle was a devastating blow to Goddess and her team. Fear was written all over their faces. But no one backed down or betrayed him, because to them, Goddess was their everything. All of them had received the blood of Goddess. It was Goddess's blood that gave them life. Therefore, they also needed to pay absolute loyalty. This was also the reason why Goddess could order them around at will. All of you, do your best to destroy this light screen, Goddess ordered. After a short period of reorganization, Hundreds of spiritualists tried to break through the glory of Olympus. But the result was still disappointing. The glory of Olympus showed no signs of being breached. This caused everyone to be greatly disappointed. But it was also within reason. This was a spell created by the Queen of Heaven, Hera, and she had personally set it up. In the past, the records of the glory of Olympus had been broken by mortal necromancers. Even if it was the same spell, the effect would certainly be different for mortals and gods. Hundreds of spiritualists worked together to attack the glory of Olympus, but the light of Olympus did not even cause a ripple. Damn it! Goddess did not hide her anger at all. You useless things! Even though Goddess knew that it was not their fault at all. But at this time, she needed to find someone to vent her anger on. There was no one else. She naturally needed to vent her anger on her subordinates. Master, only by obtaining the scepter of ruler from those people can you pass through the glory of Olympus. The scepter of ruler was also known as the scepter of Zeus. In the age of gods thousands of years ago, the kings of ancient Greece had to come to Mount Olympus to pay tribute. In order for the kings to enter Mount Olympus, every king recognized by the gods was given a scepter of Zeus. Although the scepter of Zeus was not a powerful magic item, it allowed one to pass through every part of Mount Olympus. Over time, the scepter of Zeus became the symbol of the king. That was why the scepter of Zeus was called the scepter of ruler. Goddess had searched for the tombs or ruins of many ancient kings, but none of them had found the scepter of ruler. On the other hand, Faxiban and the others had found the scepter of ruler in one of the ruins with only a few people. From the beginning to the end, what Goddess wanted was the scepter in Faxiban's hands. Goddess's face was gloomy. We will wait here. As long as Faxiban and the others are not dead, they will have to come here eventually. Or rather, they have been here for a long time. Suddenly Goddess had an idea. Use detection. I feel that they are nearby. Several spiritualists who were good at detection walked out and used detection at the same time. Instantly, Faxiban and the others' concealment spells were exposed. In fact, they were less than 200 meters away from Goddess's team. They had originally planned to waste time with Goddess. They didn't come out until Goddess lost her patience and finally left. But no one expected that Goddess would suddenly have a flash of inspiration. She suddenly had her subordinates use detection to make their concealment spells ineffective. Goddess looked at Faxiban and the others with a complicated expression on her face. Faxiban and the others were also helpless, even though Goddess's team had suffered heavy losses. But they still didn't plan to fight Goddess head-on. Miss Goddess, what a coincidence. We meet again. Faxiban quickly adjusted his mentality, and his face was full of smiles and sincerity. Faxiban, remember what I said last time? The next time we meet, we won't be so peaceful. Are you sure you want to fight us here? Faxiban's smile was still the same. It's not that I underestimate you, but even if you win, you won't be able to escape unscathed, especially you. Hand over the scepter of ruler, and I will let bygones be bygones. Hehe, do you think we will believe you? If you refuse, then let's start an all-out war. Maybe we can't escape unscathed, but you will definitely die. Chapter 2093. Maybe we can't win, but we can definitely drag you to hell with us. Faxiban's attitude was just as resolute. He was just like a brute. Also, do you really think we dare to cooperate with you without any trump cards? We know you're up to no good. Goddess's heart skipped a beat. Did Faxiban and the others really have a trump card? Faxiban, I'll tell you the truth. Even if the ruler's scepter is in your hands, it'll be very difficult for you to use it. It requires a large amount of mana. Only we have enough people to activate the ruler's scepter. With the few of you, unless everyone's mana is 10 times stronger, you won't be able to activate the ruler's scepter. Even if we can't get anything, it's still better than letting you have your way. Faxiban wasn't sure if Goddess was telling the truth. After all, their research on the ruler's scepter was still very shallow. They didn't even know what the ruler's scepter was used for. But they definitely couldn't admit it. As you said, my goal has never been the golden apple, so we can continue to cooperate. I can also pretend that the unhappiness in the past never happened. Goddess's proposal was indeed tempting. But she really didn't have any credibility. That was why Ruan Faxben wouldn't easily believe Goddess's words. Why should I believe you? Do you know what it means to lose credibility? First, you have to tell us what you're looking for, and what your ultimate goal is. Otherwise, we definitely won't cooperate with you anymore. After all, your personal confidence is too low. The golden apple is also my goal, Goddess said. But it's not your first goal. What is your first goal? Goddess was silent for a while. Finally, she said, Apollo's eye. Apollo was the god of light. Poets and writers later wrote Apollo as the god of the sun. In fact, Apollo wasn't the true god of the sun. Why would Apollo's eye be in the sacred garden? In the myths, Apollo and Hera did not have a harmonious relationship between mother and son. Apollo was the son of Zeus and the goddess Leto. After the goddess Leto became pregnant, Hera forbade the earth from giving Leto a place to give birth. Leto could only run around in pain until she finally found the unknown island that Asteria had transformed into. Poseidon then raised 4 golden pillars from the bottom of the sea and lifted the unknown island into the air. That was why Apollo became enemies with Queen Hera even before he was born. Queen Hera hates all the illegitimate children of Zeus. Do you think it's strange that she collected the organs of these illegitimate children? What's the use of the eye of Apollo? Apollo is the god of light, the god of prophecy, the god of music, and the god of resolving disasters. Apollo's eyes can see the future. Then why should we believe that you won't betray us again? Ruan finally got to the point. I will only choose 20 of my subordinates to enter the holy garden with me to protect me. You can rest assured now, right? Ruan Faxi thought for a moment and exchanged a look with Risa. Risa disliked Goddess, but she still understood the situation. 1 eye of Apollo or 2? 1, Goddess answered. You can have the eye of Apollo. No matter how many golden apples there are, they all belong to us. All right, I accept this distribution plan, Goddess said. Just then, Ruan Faxi walked to Goddess with the ruler's scepter. The others still stood behind, maintaining a certain distance from Goddess's team. Goddess spread her hands in front of Ruan Faxi. Ruan Faxi shook his head. I won't hand over the ruler's scepter. Didn't you say that you need to gather a large amount of magic to activate the ruler's scepter? I'll do it. Ruan Faxi was still very careful. All right. Goddess didn't want to have a dispute with Ruan Faxben over this kind of thing. After all, the holy garden was right in front of her. She just wanted to get what she wanted as soon as possible. Raise the ruler's scepter, one of Goddess's subordinates said. Even though we're gathering magic in the scepter, the wielder also needs a large amount of magic. If you don't have enough magic, you should give up on controlling the ruler's scepter. I know. I don't need you to remind me. Let's begin. Then let's begin. Just then, hundreds of spiritualists started sending magic into the ruler's scepter. Ruan Faxi immediately felt the magic gathered by the ruler's scepter. He felt like the wielder was a super bomb. The large amount of magic made the ruler's scepter shine so brightly that people could not look at it directly. Ruan Faxi quickly analyzed the activated ruler's scepter. Soon, Ruan Faxi understood the basics of the operation. Ruan Faxi raised the ruler's scepter and pointed it at the entrance of the holy garden. A torrent of magic shot towards the entrance. An opening immediately appeared in the barrier of light that enveloped the sacred garden. Goddess could not wait to go in. Stop. If you don't want to be cut open, stop, Ruan Faxi scolded. What are you doing? Going back on your words. Goddess turned and glared at Ruan Faxi. No. The order of entry needs to be changed, Ruan Faxi said. My men will go in first. Fine. Goddess's face darkened as she gritted her teeth. You guys go in first, Miss Goddess. Other than you and the 20 men you chose, everyone else retreat to a place outside the safety line, Ruan Faxi said to Xian Li and the others. Goddess could only agree to Ruan Faxi's request. After Xian Li, Lisa, Colin, and more went in, it was Goddess and her men's turn. After Goddess and her men entered, Ruan Faxben entered as well. Then, the opening in the light barrier was closed. Stop them, Goddess said and turned to leave. She no longer needed to hide her intentions. This also meant that the agreement they made not long ago was now completely invalid. Faxi, it seems like she can't wait to tear off all pretenses. That's normal. Is her intention really Apollo's eye? This is Queen Hera's treasury. There are countless treasures here. Maybe Apollo's eye is only one of them. What we need to do is find those treasures before she does. Chapter 2094. Even though they were on the same starting line, but Goddess knew this place better. It wasn't her first time here. She had been here before when she was very young. Moreover, the 20 subordinates that Goddess had chosen might not be the strongest among them, but they were the most difficult to deal with. Goddess never intended to let these 20 people defeat Ruan Faxben and the others from the beginning. Her goal was to have them keep Ruan Faxben busy. Call on, I don't need you here. Go after them and find the treasure faster than that woman, Ruan Faxben said. Kellen immediately circled around the battlefield. But before he could run out of the battlefield, a magic rope made of black light wrapped around Kellen's leg. Master said that none of you are allowed to leave. Ah. The spiritualists had caught fire before he could finish his sentence. Who does your master think she is? She's just an old witch, Reisa said disdainfully. The flames burned the spiritualist's head beyond recognition. Luckily, his companions helped him put out the fire. Otherwise, Reisa might have roasted his head. But Kalon still took the opportunity to escape. Kalon, if you see that woman, kill her for me. Ruan Faxi didn't need to worry anymore at this time. This time, they completely shed all pretense of cordiality. There was no need to ease up, nor was there any reason to do so. Other than the garden in the center, there were many buildings around it. The buildings were like a maze. It was too complicated for Kalon, who was here for the first time. He did not even find Goddess's shadow, let alone the treasure room. The place was too complicated. Kalon felt dizzy after walking around a few times. Suddenly, Kalon saw a square palace in front of him. The style of the palace was similar to the Parthenon temple. There were 12 white stone pillars in the shape of gears, and the eaves of the palace had exquisite reliefs. Even with the passage of time, one could still feel the craftsmanship and elegance of the reliefs. Colin naturally thought that the palace was a very important place in this place. Thus, Kalon entered the palace without hesitation. However, the interior of the palace was empty. There was a stone pedestal at the top, and on it sat a tall, withered corpse. Even though the corpse was dead, it still maintained a pondering posture. He rested his chin on his fists and gazed into the distance. His golden hair had lost its luster. He was wearing white off-the-shoulder clothes, with vines tied around his waist, and a golden hoop on his head. Beside the seat was a pair of gauntlets with a lion's head. Colin felt that this mummy was a little scary. It was as if the mummy could jump up and strangle him at any time. Colin cautiously approached the mummy. After carefully observing for a long time, he did not see any movement from the mummy. There definitely wouldn't be any treasure here. This was because there was nothing else in the hall other than this tall corpse. Moreover, the architectural style of ancient Greece would not have placed a treasure room in such a place. Therefore, this place could basically be ruled out. Colin circled the hall twice before leaving. Of course, apart from the lack of treasures, the main reason was that this place gave him a very good feeling. Kellen did not notice that the mummy's gaze had been following him all the way until he left the hall. However, not long after Colin left, Goddess came to the hall. When Goddess saw the mummy in the hall, a faint smile appeared on her face. Thousands of years of waiting, thousands of years of pursuit, and the hardships and frustrations along the way seemed to no longer be that important. Hercules. Goddess walked towards the mummy step by step, and at the same time, called out the name of the god of strength, the illegitimate son of Zeus and Alcmene, who also had a familiar name, Hercules. Goddess came in front of Hercules. Goddess was only as tall as Hercules' knee. As the illegitimate daughter of Poseidon, Goddess and Hercules had similar identities, backgrounds, and experiences. The difference was that Hercules completed 12 impossible feats, and he was named a god. As the illegitimate son of Zeus, Hercules was born with great power. He was almost invincible, and even during the War of the Titans, he was the main force in defeating the children of Gaia for the gods. Although he was only a demigod, His feats were greater than most gods. Godarus was jealous and envious of Hercules, because they had the same background and birth, but they did not have the same ability. But that was in the past. Now Godarus was no longer jealous, only smug, because Godarus could still stand. But Hercules could only sit on the throne given by the gods like a withered corpse. Hercules, we meet again. This seems to be the second time we meet. You should still remember me. After all, the memory of a god is quite good, Godarus said in a smug tone. Godarus. A hoarse voice came from the dried-up body. What are you doing here? I am here to give you a new life. Godarus cut her palm and let the blood flow. Accept my gift and become my follower. Go away, you inferior bloodline. Hercules' voice was still weak, but there was a hint of anger in it. Go away. Godarus's face showed a bit of sarcasm. Look at you, are you still the Hercules? Is that the Hercules who shrouded the gods in your shadow? The bloodline of Zeus made you powerful, but it didn't give you eternal life. In the end, you aren't much nobler than me. Look at me now. I'm still young and full of life. Look at you. You're weak and old. You look like you're about to die. At least, I have enjoyed glory, and you have not, Hercules said coldly. Haha, glory. You were influenced by Hera, the queen of heaven, and even killed your best friend, and then willingly accepted Hera's enslavement. Is this your glory? Haha. So this is how you define glory. I did not willingly. Hercules' voice suddenly became majestic and angry. I am cursed by her, a curse that even Zeus could not undo. Yes, even Zeus couldn't do it, but I can do it. My blood can. My blood can give you a new life, and help you break free from Hera's curse. Now is the time for you to make a decision. Accept my domination, or continue to be dominated by that old witch who you hate, and also hates you. Chapter 2095. Godarus walked up to Hercules. She clenched her fist and squeezed out a drop of blood. The blood fell on Hercules' palm. Continue to be Hera's servant, and then wither and die here. Or accept my control. The choice is in your hands. Hercules moved his palm with difficulty, and his eyes fell on the drop of blood. At this moment, Godarus was also nervous. Her lifelong pursuit was now in the hands of Hercules. Accept this drop of blood, and she would have everything. Even if Hercules was only a demigod, he had power beyond that of a god. But if he refused, all Godarus's hopes would be dashed. At this moment, Godarus had already stopped talking. She had said what she needed to say. The more he said, the more likely it would make Hercules more resistant. So it was best not to overdo it. Are you worried about my refusal now? Hercules looked at Godarus. Of course. You are my biggest hope, Godarus said. My hesitation has made my choice clear. With that, the drop of blood that Hercules kept his promise seeped into his skin. In an instant, Hercules took a deep breath. His body suddenly exuded a strong aura. His dry skin began to swell like an inflated balloon. His withered blonde hair became lustrous. His sunken face began to fill with blood. Whoosh! Every breath he took would make him stronger. The air seemed to be suppressed by his aura, and became viscous. Godarus's breathing became very difficult. But she also felt the overwhelming power in Hercules. And the stronger Hercules was, the happier she would be. Hercules walked step by step to Godelus, and knelt on one knee in front of Godelus. My master, I will offer you my most sincere loyalty. Even when Hercules knelt down, Godarus only reached his waist. Hercules was too big for his eyes. Godarus's fingertips gently plundered Hercules' muscles. Godarus had never felt such surging and boundless power from her subordinates. Only a god like Hercules was qualified to follow in his footsteps. Compared to Hercules, the men she had recruited in the past were like shit. Get up and follow me. At this moment, Godarus no longer needed anything. As long as she had Hercules, she could have everything. And in this holy garden, Hera's treasure room did not need to be specially obtained. In any case, everything here would be his sooner or later. Godarus took Hercules on a tour, as if she was touring her own back garden. At the same time, Ruan Faxben, Exenli Lisa, Moore and Kalon all felt an indescribable terror in the air. Goosebumps rose all over their bodies. They did not know what it was that caused them to have such a reaction. He had clearly dealt with Godarus' subordinates. Why did he suddenly feel this uneasy aura? Where did this uneasiness come from? Kalon, where are you now? Ruan Faxben asked through the communicator. I don't know where I am. It's too big here, Kalon replied. Did you see anything out of the ordinary? No. I didn't see a living thing along the way. What about Goddess? I didn't see her either. I don't know where she went. Do you still remember the way back? Come back and meet us immediately. We can't stay here anymore. We have to leave immediately, Ruan Faxben said. Xianli was a little reluctant when she heard Ruan Faxben's words. But we haven't found the golden apple yet. Xianli, the golden apple is on the big tree in front of us. But now is definitely not the best time. We have been here once, so we can foresee more dangers next time. If we continue to stay here and risk our lives, it will be a very unwise choice. Okay. Xianli was not very willing, but she had learned to listen to orders along the way, and she trusted Ruan Faxben's judgment. You can't go anywhere. Just then Goddess came out. Hercules followed behind Goddess. Everyone saw Hercules the moment they saw him. They knew that the sense of danger and uneasiness came from Hercules. Ruan Faxben's face finally showed a serious expression. He was no longer as relaxed and natural as before. The terrifying aura made his smile disappear. Miss Goddess, is he your real target? That's right. Now Goddess was no longer angry or anxious. All she had was calmness and calmness. Of course, she did not forget the humiliation that Ruan Faxben and the others had inflicted on her. Since you've already achieved your goal, why must you be so ruthless? If you did not offend me, maybe I would have let you go to show my magnanimity. But you lowly guys, how dare you offend me? Goddess became angrier as she spoke. You started all the trouble, Miss Goddess. Then all of you should obey, not disobey and disobey. It has already happened. Let's get over it. Reisa curled her lips. This guy had learned bad things from the president. At this critical moment, he still had to make a joke. He really felt that the woman was joking with them. I hope you can still laugh later. Xianli looked at Goddess. Miss Goddess, not everyone has to give in to you. I don't think you are nobler than anyone. Shut up, lowly woman, Goddess snorted. Goddess snorted coldly. Perhaps I need to let my most loyal servant show you what it means to be in awe. Everyone was ready to fight. Seeing the attitude of Ruan Faxben and the others, Goddess could not help but show some mockery. It seems that you still do not understand who you are facing. Well, I will give you 30 seconds. If you can hold on for 30 seconds, then I will let you go. Goddess waved her hand gently. Hercules, 30 seconds, is that enough? Master, it is enough. Hercules? Everyone's expression changed when they heard the name. For Europeans and Americans, the legend of Hercules was too resounding. Chapter 2096. 30 seconds. Ruan looked at the time. At the same time, he looked back at Xianli, then at Moer and Lisa. Hercules was not in a hurry to act. He was waiting for Goddess's order. Are you ready? If I say not, will you give us time to prepare? Hercules, you can kill them now. Remember, don't take more than 30 seconds. Goddess snorted coldly. Hercules strode up to the four of them. Even though he had not made a move yet, he was still standing in front of them. He still put a lot of pressure on them. Start the countdown, Goddess said. But Hercules still did not move. Instead, it was Ruan Faxben, Xianli, Reisa and more who moved first. Curse of Chaos. Xianli cast a curse spell first. Moore's doppelganger appeared behind Hercules, hugged Hercules and self-destructed. But Hercules was still unmoved. It was as if what happened under his feet was not an explosion at all, but a bug. Go to hell. Reisa yelled at the top of her voice. She put her palms into the posture of releasing Kamehameha, and a red light burst out from her palms. The red light went straight to Hercules' head. Boom! It was all the heat energy that Reisa had accumulated along the way, and it was released in an instant. In the violent explosion, Hercules was still unscathed. Goddess's face was full of excitement. The stronger Hercules was, the more pleasure she would get from it. His indestructible body remained unmoved under such a powerful attack. Was there anything in the world that could hurt him? Ruan Faxben, you don't have much time left. Please cherish your last few seconds. Goddess looked at Ruan Faxaben proudly, her face full of mockery. Ruan shrugged helplessly. You know I'm not good at fighting. So what? Do you think I will let you go because of that? Hercules was already standing in front of Ruan. He raised his right arm. His right arm was thicker than Ruan's. A strange smile suddenly appeared on Ruan's face. At this moment, a figure suddenly jumped out from behind Goddess. Kalon had been lying in ambush, waiting for Hercules to make his move. This was their only chance. Goddess was startled, but just as Kalon's dagger was about to touch Goddess, a shield suddenly appeared in front of Goddess. Korin was immediately repelled by the shield. Oh no! Ruan Faxi's expression changed. Hercules immediately gave up on Ruan Faxburn in front of him, and rushed in front of Goddess, shielding her behind him. Hercules raised his right arm, and threw a punch at Korin, who was more than 10 meters away. Kalon dodge! Ruan Faxaben exclaimed. Kalon tried to move away. A terrifying sense of oppression came from his side. Then Kalon heard a loud noise behind him. Korin looked back, and saw the light of Olympus rippling. Hundreds of people couldn't even cause a ripple. But Hercules's punch almost shattered the light of Olympus. The light of Olympus. That old witch Hera, she wants to trap me with this. She is too naive. Hercules snorted and threw another punch. This punch was more powerful than the previous one. When this force fell on the light of Olympus, the whole sacred garden trembled. Everyone could not stand still. 30 seconds are up, Miss Goddess. Ruan Faxi breathed a long sigh of relief. Hercules, kill them for me, Hercules shouted. I want to shatter the light of Olympus. Hercules seemed to be resisting Goddess's order. They have the scepter of Zeus. You don't need to shatter the light of Olympus. You can come and go as you please. Now go and kill them. Okay. Hercules could not really resist, but as a demigod, he had a certain resistance. Miss Goddess, are you going to go back on your word? Ruan Faxi looked at Goddess. Although they knew it was inevitable, Ruan Faxben and the others were still disappointed. I don't need to promise anything to ants, and I don't need to abide by anything, Goddess said calmly. I see. Ruan Faxburn sighed. Have you given up? Seeing the disappointment of Ruan Faxben and the others, Goddess suddenly felt the thrill of revenge. I have given up, Ruan Faxi said helplessly. Are you regretting it now? Yes, I do regret it, Ruan Faxi said. But now, I will never forgive you. What do you think I regret? Do you think I regret not accepting your recruitment? Of course not. You think too much. I regret not killing you. It was such a good opportunity to slay a god. For thousands of years, there were not many people who succeeded in slaying a god. Such a good opportunity was placed in front of me, but I did not cherish it. Bastard. Bastard with just you? Just then, a dot of light appeared in the distance of Mount Olympus. The dot of light was too far away, so it was difficult to see what it was. It looked like a meteor with a long tail. Goddess's eyes were also attracted by the meteor. That meteor was simply too eye-catching. Moreover, it seemed to be flying in their direction. Goddess widened her eyes, trying to see what it was. But the thing was wrapped in a ball of fire, and it was so fast that she could not see it at all. It flew from the horizon to in front of her in a few seconds. It was too fast. Rumble! The thing smashed into the glory of Olympus. In an instant the earth shook. The impact and explosion of the falling thing swallowed the spiritualists in the periphery. Goddess lost her balance and fell to the ground. Her eyes never left the glory of Olympus. The glory of Olympus disintegrated and shattered in front of her eyes. It was like a mirror being smashed by a fist. The fragments rippled and spread to the surroundings. So scary. What was that? What was going on? Exionly looked at the figure falling from the sky. Her mouth was wide open, her face full of shock. Uncle? Exionly cried out. Chen Zhao turned to Exionly. If Faxi hadn't told me, how long were you going to be stubborn? Exionly pouted. We can solve it. Divine Emperor of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2097. Miss Goddess, did you forget what I told you? Take good care of my daughter. Seems like you didn't do it. Chen Zhao turned to look at Goddess. Goddess looked confused. She didn't know how Chen Zhao had come in. Was the impact just now caused by him? How did he do it? But Godarus wasn't going to waste time talking to Qin Zhao. Kill him. Hercules charged at Qin Zhao. Boom. The huge impact sent Ruan Faxburn, Exa and Li Call on more Risa and Godarus flying. Only Qin Zhao and Hercules were left. Godarus was dizzy, and she climbed up from the ground. She was about to scold Hercules, but she saw Hercules take a few steps back while Qin Zhao stood where he was, unscathed. Hercules clenched his fists and stared at Qin Zhao in astonishment. No one has ever been able to take my fists, not even giants. That's because you haven't met me before. Qin Zhao moved his joints. But I want to say the same thing to you. You don't think that's my real power, do you? Hercules's gaze suddenly sharpened. The golden light on his body was like a blooming flower, instantly blossoming. Godarus had been a bit panicked when she saw Hercules lose to Qin Zhao. Now that Hercules had become even stronger, she was overjoyed. Hercules was so powerful, but this wasn't his real power. This made Godarus even more excited. Wrapped in golden light, Hercules charged at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao took the punch head-on, and also retreated a few meters. But the next moment, Qin Zhao kicked hard and shot at Hercules like an arrow. Boom, boom, boom. The entire holy garden was enveloped in the terrifying power of Qin Zhao and Hercules. Godarus's face was filled with disbelief. There was actually someone in the world who could fight against Hercules? It was natural that Hercules was powerful, because he was the son of Zeus. He was Hercules, the god of strength. But what was up with that man? He was so powerful that it was abnormal. He could actually fight back and forth with Hercules, and their attacks were wreaking havoc here. However, to her delight, Qin Zhao seemed to be weaker than Hercules. Qin Zhao was punched to the ground by Hercules. Roar! Hercules thumped his chest and roared like a gorilla. I am Hercules. No one can defeat me in strength. Qin Zhao spat out a mouthful of blood. He rarely spat blood anymore. That last scene in Rome didn't count. Qin Zhao wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, looking at Hercules, who was swaggering in front of him. Uncle. Seeing him injured, Li couldn't help but worry. Don't go over. Ruan pulled Li back. Your uncle is fine. Ruan Faxi knew Qin Zhao too well. That was just Qin Zhao's normal state. Qin Zhao took a deep breath. Then let's start the second round. Mortal, it's already amazing for you to be able to do this. Bang. Before Hercules could finish, he was sent flying by Qin Zhao's sudden punch. Hercules touched the blood at the corner of his mouth. Roar! Hercules roared again and pounced at Qin Zhao. But Qin Zhao wasn't in the same state as before. After being assimilated by the darkness, Qin Zhao's strength had multiplied. Hercules didn't believe it and pounced at Qin Zhao again. But the result was the same as before. He was sent flying by Qin Zhao's punch again. Hercules didn't feel good after taking the punch. He started spitting out mouthfuls of blood. Is that all you've got? Qin Zhao tilted his head and looked at Hercules. Ah! All the veins on Hercules' body popped up. Blue veins popped on his forehead. Hercules' strength increased again. His breathing became chaotic. His eyes were bloodshot, and his chest heaved up and down like a mad beast. Uft! Is this the true face of Hercules? Qin Zhao mocked Hercules. I'll kill you. Hercules growled. He stamped his foot, and the ground cracked. Boom! Hercules' strength bombarded Qin Zhao. In this state, Hercules' strength had increased several times again. Return to 1. Qin Zhao also increased his strength. Hercules and Qin Zhao were locked in a contest of strength. Nevertheless, Qin Zhao was still better than him. Hercules was sent flying, and was punched by Qin Zhao again. It landed on the trunk of the golden apple tree. The golden apple tree was a sacred tree, but it wasn't harder than regular plants. It was just that it was bigger than ordinary plants. The golden apple tree was smashed into pieces by Hercules' attack. A golden fruit rolled in front of Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao picked it up. Is this the legendary golden apple? Hercules stood up again. He vomited more blood, but he was already in a state of madness. His injuries were worse, but it also made him crazier. Hercules' state reminded Qin Zhao of Ascamor, the demon that had been sealed underground in the African plains for a long time. Of course, while their states were similar, they weren't the same kind of magic. Ascamor's was a talent and innate ability. The more injured he was, the more powerful he was. Hercules, on the other hand, was purely his willpower. He didn't actually become stronger. He just forced himself to release more power. If he continued to fight in this state, he would only die faster. Of course, Chen Zhao wouldn't pity him. He was an enemy, the kind that couldn't be defeated easily. Sympathizing with him was just asking for trouble. Chen Zhao casually tossed the golden apple to Exionly. Giant spirit transformation. Hercules wasn't inferior like Ascamore. He was a true Hercules. If he continued to strengthen like this, he would only get himself into trouble. So Chen Zhao didn't plan to go easy. By now, Hercules had lost most of his rationality. He couldn't judge the situation anymore. He only attacked Chen Zhao out of instinct. Every time he took a step, the ground would crack. His blood was burning with flames, starting from his insides and spreading throughout his entire body. Hercules jumped up heavily. Chen Zhao also moved at the same time. He didn't hold back at all. His speed and power had reached the peak of what Chen Zhao could release. The two collided in the sky. The huge impact also ignited Hercules' god blood. Boom! Everyone forgot about everything else as they stared at the sky. They looked at the sun in the sky. It was a sun with a diameter of 1,000 meters. It wasn't a small sun anymore. It was like a real sun falling. God King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2098. Goddess kept looking up at the sky. She clenched her fists tightly. Just then, something fell from the sky. It was a person. More accurately, half a person. What Goddess saw was a body without an upper body. Everything above the abdomen had disappeared. Goddess felt as if she was suffocating. How could she not recognize that half of the body belonged to Hercules? It was only half an hour. She fell from heaven to hell. Chen Zhao descended from the sky and landed before Goddess with a suffocating pressure. Goddess was so scared that her face turned pale, and she fell to the ground. She had never thought that what she'd spent her entire life pursuing would be so fragile. President. Ruan Fazabin walked over. What? You want to plead for her? Chen Zhao glanced at Ruan. Ruan had an evil smile on his face. No, I just want to feel what it's like to kill a god. Chen Zhao glanced at Ruan and took 2 steps back. When Goddess looked at Ruan, her eyes were filled with pleading. Ms. Goddess, I don't think you've ever thought that you'd face such a situation, right? Mr. Fazabin, give me a chance. Ruan Faxbin's smile was still as chilling as ever. Sorry, we're the same kind of people. Whatever you want, I can give it to you, including myself. Goddess didn't look high and mighty anymore. She was like a woman who'd been humiliated. Before Ruan, she didn't dare to do anything other than compromise. Your suggestion is tempting, but I still want to try killing a god. Ruan was very sure. This was probably the only chance he'd get to kill a god in his life. Even if Goddess was only a demigod, even if she was the weakest among all demigods. Nevertheless, Ruan wasn't a picky eater. No matter how weak she was still a demigod. Of course, there was another important reason. Chen Zhao was right behind him. Just then, Mount Olympus started shaking violently. The tremor this time was more violent than any of the previous ones. The entire mountain was being torn apart. The battle had destroyed the foundation of Mount Olympus. This mountain was not the real Mount Olympus. It was just a corner of Mount Olympus. Although it was huge, the mountain was not actually one with the earth. Therefore, after that fierce battle, it was normal for the mountains and the earth to be torn apart. Moreover, both Chen Zhao and Hercules had the ability to tear the earth and destroy mountains. Farsben, hurry up. Under Chen Zhao's urging, Ruan Faxi's happiness decreased a lot. However, if he continued to delay, the mountain would probably collapse. Therefore, he didn't have much time to have fun. Of course, he still killed Goddess and did not leave her alive. After Ruan Faxben killed Goddess, Brendel was shocked. Chen Zhao led everyone away from the collapsing Mount Olympus. Everyone held hands and Chen Zhao lifted them into the air. The people in the sky were just in time to enjoy the process of the mountain collapsing. What a pity. There are so many treasures in that golden apple tree. Ruan Faxi sighed and looked at the collapsing palace below. President, why don't you go down and dig? You might find something good. No need. Didn't you find the golden apple already? Chen Zhao said calmly. Chen Zhao didn't plan on going through the trash. He would dig up something of unknown value in a collapsed mountain. The effort and the reward might not be proportional. After leaving Mount Olympus, Chen Zhao put everyone on the ground. How do you want to split the golden apple? Chen Zhao didn't plan on getting involved in the process. After all, they'd obtained it through hard work. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing how to split it. How about we cut it into 5 pieces? One for each person. Chen Zhao had a bad idea. No, Ruan Faxi said hurriedly. This might be the last golden apple in the world. The best way was for one person to take out 4 pieces of the same value as the golden apple and share it with the other 4. But the golden apple's value was immeasurable. It wasn't that it was immeasurable. It was that its true value was immeasurable. All the information about the golden apple came from legends. How much was the legendary golden apple's true value? No one could guarantee it. No one spoke. Even the smartest Lisa didn't know how to split it. President, you helped too. Aren't you going to split it? I won't. I didn't do much. The 5 of you can discuss it among yourselves. Chen Zhao didn't want to break their tacit understanding. If Chen Zhao participated, they'd probably give the golden apple to him directly. Then, they'd take some dispensable benefits from Chen Zhao. Even if they said they were willing, they might not be happy inside. President, we really don't know how to split it. How about this? You guys go and find 4 legendary treasures of the same value. That way each person can take one. Chen Zhao had a very unreliable idea. Everyone shuddered at the sight. After this expedition, everyone was mentally and physically exhausted. Even Xian Li, who'd loved adventures in the beginning, felt tired. Go through the same adventure 4 more times? Maybe they'd consider it after they'd rested enough. Anyway, the 5 of them didn't have such thoughts in the short term. Then how do we keep the golden apple? Don't ask me. You guys decide, Chen Zhao said calmly. My request is simple, Chen Zhao said calmly. Everyone must be satisfied with the distribution. Uncle, how did you know how to enter this place? I already knew this location, Chen Zhao said. Chen Zhao could have taken the golden apple by himself. But he didn't do that. After all, this was Xian Li's adventure. Taking away the ultimate prize was a very immoral thing to do. Along the way they were attacked by some creatures. But even if Chen Zhao didn't do anything, the 5 of them could easily deal with these attacks. Chen Zhao was also observing Xian Li's performance in battle. Xian Li's forte lay in curses. She couldn't attack directly, but it was quite useful in battle. This was Chen Zhao's first time observing Xian Li in battle. He had to admit that Xian Li had indeed grown a lot after training for so long. Chapter 2099. Auntie Feilai, I'm back. Feilai went up and hugged Xian Li. Welcome home. A group of children sprinted to Xian Li. They all warmly welcomed Xian Li back. Everyone was very happy. After all, Xian Li had been away for more than 2 months. It's good that you're back. If someone's missing at Christmas, it'll feel like something's missing. Feilai touched Xian Li's hair. Xian Li, you've grown taller, haven't you? 2 months ago, Xian Li still looked like a big kid. But after 2 months, Xian Li's face looked more weathered, and there was a hint of seriousness between her brows. She seemed to have matured quite a bit. At night, everyone held a banquet for Xian Li. Chen Zhao booked the entire restaurant. To be honest, 2 months didn't seem like a long time. But Chen Zhao and Feilai both felt that Xian Li was different. She'd really grown up. She could still play with her siblings, but her gaze was completely different. In the past, she'd played with her siblings, but she was actually playing herself too. Now playing was actually companionship. At the dining table, she knew how to put food on her siblings' plates. When she saw her siblings' food fall on their clothes, she also knew how to help them clean up. After returning to the hotel, Chen Zhao realized that the atmosphere was a bit strange. When they passed through the hotel lobby, the hotel staff were all standing straight and ready for battle. Chen Zhao was a bit surprised. They didn't look at him with caution or hostility, but their gazes were too strange. Just then, a priest in a white robe walked over. Hello, you must be Mr. Chen. I am. And you are? We're His Majesty John's followers. His Majesty wants to see you. Old John had sent them? Why would he want to see him? Where? When? Now. If it's convenient, please come with me. Chen Zhao turned back and looked at his family. Fei Lai nodded. Go. Take care of the kids. Okay. Chen Zhao left with the people from the church. No wonder the people in the hotel looked at him differently. Although the Vatican was only a religious country, it had the highest status here. For Westerners, this was a holy place. The Pope was God's messenger. Chen Zhao was a non-believer. Even though Chen Zhao had come into contact with many supernatural events. Superhumans, demons, angels, gods, and even mutants. But Chen Zhao still had no faith. In fact, Chen Zhao still believed that gods were just more powerful humans. Even other supernatural species were just a step ahead in evolution. This kind of thinking was typical of people who had no belief in God. Of course, he wouldn't deny the significance of religion. In this era, religion had changed from the initial worship to spiritual guidance. God was no longer an omnipotent and supreme being in religion. God is the spiritual sustenance of man. The car stopped in front of a church in the Vatican. Compared to the St. Peter's Cathedral that he had visited last time, this church was much more ordinary. A soft light shone from the church windows. Under the priest's guidance, Chen Zhao walked into the church. Old John was kneeling in front of the cross, praying and chanting the Bible. Please wait a moment. His Majesty is in the middle of a lesson. Chen Zhao nodded and sat on the seat next to him. A few minutes later, Old John's prayer ended. The etiquette of the church was quite complicated. After that, Old John had to wash his hands. After a series of steps, Old John finally walked up to Chen Zhao. Mr. Chen, hello. Hello, Your Majesty. Chen Zhao had a very good impression of Old John. He was even better than Zhang Tianyi. However, Chen Zhao would be friends with Zhang Tianyi, but not Old John. Because Old John was hard to get close to. It wasn't because of his status. It was because of Old John's personality. It was as if everyone standing before him would feel like they were bad people. The old man rejected all evil. Those who interacted with him could see all the human virtues in him. They could also discover all the evils in themselves. So he could be a senior, a teacher, or a guide. But they definitely couldn't be friends. Mr. Chen, I suddenly realized that you're lying to me. I don't understand, Chen Zhao replied, playing dumb. He just didn't want to admit it. Khmor Deacon is dead. So what? Nothing. He deserved to die, because I once made a prophecy for him, that he wouldn't live past this year. But I realized that you killed him. How did you realize? Chen Zhao looked at Old John in surprise. He lost the bet, Old John said. Now his power is in you. Do you know his power? Yes, I do. But you've never stopped him. I did, but you didn't know. He died under his own power. In your Easterners' words, it's called karma. So, Your Majesty, did you call me here today to denounce me? No, I won't take revenge for anyone, especially Khmor Deacon. Then why did you call me here today? Let's chat and confirm our guesses. Then you're sure, right? Yes, I'm sure. Old John nodded. Chen Zhao stared at Old John. He had a feeling that Old John definitely didn't call him here just to confirm this. There had to be something else. Alright, there's something else. If something big happens in the world again, I hope Mr. Chen can lend a hand. What if I refuse? Will you punish me? Chen Zhao asked. Mr. Chen, I'm not threatening you. I just want to tell you that the power you obtained from Khmor Deacon is very evil. You need to use justice to dissolve his power. My power doesn't just come from Khmor Deacon. There are other powers from hell too. Not all the power from hell is evil. Even if it's evil power, if it's used by a righteous person, it won't be evil. I just want to tell you that some powers will cause an effect, and Khmor Deacon's power is one of those powers. I think the world is very peaceful and safe now. It's not that easy for something big to happen. This world is far more fragile and unstable than you think. Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2100. With righteous people like you protecting the world, I believe in you. Don't disappoint me. Chen Zhao shirked his responsibility calmly. Chen Zhao wasn't interested in John's righteousness. He was even a bit conflicted, even though John didn't have any selfish motives. Chen Zhao was like this, or rather, everyone was like this. Everyone had a rebellious mentality. The more someone asked you to do something, the more you wouldn't want to do it. At the end of the day, Chen Zhao was just a mortal, a normal person. Moreover, he really didn't want to have anything to do with the church. The more powerful they were, the more trouble they would have. If they came to him for no reason and asked him to do something, it would be even more troublesome. So, Chen Zhao always kept his distance from them. Sorry, Your Holiness, I have something to do. I'll be leaving now. John nodded slightly. Go. He didn't plan on forcing Chen Zhao. At Chen Zhao's level, he couldn't force him. Chen Zhao turned and left. The next day, Chen Zhao's family left Rome. Chen Zhao's family had been playing in Rome for a few days. They pretty much finished all the places they wanted to play. But Chen Zhao wasn't going to another city in another country. Instead, he went back to Los Angeles. Although everyone came out to play, they would still feel tired even if they were to play. No matter how fun it was outside, it wasn't as comfortable and relaxing as home. Even the energetic children showed signs of exhaustion after a few days. Hearing that they were going home, they were all overjoyed. However, on the plane, the children turned into frosted eggplants and became listless again. When the plane landed, the kids only recovered their energy. It was Xian Li's first time at Mirror Lake Manor. The first thing Chen Zhao did was pick a room with Xian Li. Xian Li, which room do you like? I'm fine with anything. You don't have to. After all, this is your bedroom. You'll be living in this bedroom for a long time, so you have to pick a bedroom you like. I'm fine with anything, Xian Li said again. No, Chen Zhao said firmly. Nothing is fine, Chen Zhao said firmly. Everyone has their own preferences and aesthetics, so don't make do. We don't have to make do either. Xian Li was helpless but also touched. After all, Chen Zhao treated her as his real family. Then I want the first room on the 3rd floor. The room where I can see the sunrise. What about the bedroom style? Do I need to change it? Mr. Fellwood should be happy to help us modify the style. No need, I like the style of that room. Although there wasn't much to do when he got home, there were still some trivial things to do. For example, there were a few documents in Denver that Chen Zhao had to sign personally. When Stephen heard that Chen Zhao was back, he ran over to complain. After all, Chen Zhao's family had gone out to play while he was still busy. Chen Zhao's words caused him to really start shooting a new movie. Once the news of the new movie was leaked, he was completely harassed by those movie companies and could not rest. In addition to the big 6, there were also small and medium-sized film companies that wanted to cooperate with him. Don't look at how those small and medium-sized film companies can't come up with so much money. However, as long as they put Stephen's name on it, it would be a piece of cake to raise enough funds. Every day, there was someone waiting for him at his door. The big 6 even used their own resources to pressure Stephen. Anyway, he just had to get the investment quota. The 2 blockbuster movies had made Stephen the most successful director in the world. As for Chen Zhao, he was an outsider. No matter how close he was to Stephen, he couldn't get an investment slot. This was the rule of Hollywood. Many people were envious that an outsider could earn money just by playing around. If another outsider stole money, the people in the industry would be unhappy. Although the money didn't belong to them, it was their cake. Just because they couldn't eat it didn't mean that they were willing to watch others eat it. Supernatural Organization Headquarters. Is this the golden apple? Everyone surrounded the golden apple and looked at it curiously. It was a legendary treasure. One thing for sure was that the golden apple wasn't real gold. Instead, it looked like gold on the outside. From the texture, it should be the texture of a plant. I wonder what it tastes like. West licked his lips. Ruan Faxburn immediately moved the golden apple away. West, this is ours. Don't mess around, or I'll break your teeth. Stingy. West pursed his lips. It's a pity that the golden apple couldn't be moved back. It's useless even if we moved it back. The golden apple needs 3,000 years to bear fruit. We don't have that long of a lifespan. We can wait 3,000 years. Morit's face was full of regret. To everyone, the golden apple was invaluable. But because of the long waiting time, it was of little value. Thus, while everyone felt that it was a pity, they didn't think too much about it. The one who felt the most pity was Morit. After all, he was a botanist. Plants were his specialty. If he could get the legendary plant, it would be a great help to his plant research. Just then, Chen Zhao took out a branch and tossed it before Morid. Take it. I don't know if it can survive. It'll depend on your ability. Seeing the branch, Morid's eyes brightened. He immediately grabbed it. President. This is... I caught it on the way back at Mount Olympus, Chen Zhao said. Of course, Chen Zhao knew the value of the golden apple tree. But because he had to ensure his people's safety, he didn't have time to care about the tree. Moreover, the golden apple tree was too huge. It was even bigger than a castle. Even Chen Zhao's spatial ring couldn't fit it. So Chen Zhao broke off a branch and brought it back. I don't have more. If you can't grow this branch, I can't do anything either. Morid, we're all waiting for you to grow the golden apple. Then we'll all have something to eat. Don't disappoint us. If you're willing to wait 3,000 years, I'll definitely grow the golden apple. Why don't you go die? If I have 3,000 years of lifespan, do I still need to eat your golden apple? How do you guys plan to split the golden apples? West asked curiously. Chen Zhao hadn't told them that Ruan Faxburn, Xian Li, Kalon Moore and Lisa were conflicted about the golden apples. Thus, everyone was also very curious about the distribution plan. They planned to find 4 legendary treasures of the same value, and then split the golden apples. Chapter 2101. President, I didn't say that. Ruan Faxben was stunned. But don't you think that's the best way? Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. How about we cut the golden apple into 5 pieces? They didn't want to cut the golden apple into 5 pieces either. Even if they didn't know what the golden apple was for. But it was still a legendary treasure. The headquarters started a welcome party again. Chen Zhao and West stood on the balcony on the 2nd floor. How's Magri Modric? He hasn't done anything yet, West said. What's he doing? Chen Zhao frowned. I don't know, but he and his subordinates haven't been idle these days, West said. Looks like we need to give him some warnings, Chen Zhao said, narrowing his eyes. Chen Zhao looked at the two. He didn't ask them to come for a vacation. President, after Christmas, we plan to go to the 3rd red mission. Have you decided which red mission? I'm still working on it. After all, it wasn't easy to find a suitable mission among the many red missions. Magri Modric had been under a lot of pressure recently. Because of his greed, he'd offended a terrifying expert. If he hadn't been rash, things wouldn't have been so unpleasant. But now, he had no other choice. Either he attacked the target, otherwise, he would ignore the mission given by the powerhouse. Magri Modric's final choice was of course to complete that mission. After all, Dragon Tiger Mountain had a lot of people, and was extremely powerful. But they were still a righteous sect. Even if he became enemies with them, he would at most get a warrant from the spiritual world. Modric, on the other hand, wasn't afraid of this kind of arrest warrant. Within the Sacred Flame sect, who did not have a few wanted posters on them. But if that person attacked, it wouldn't be as simple as a normal warrant. He would really kill them. But their target, Yang Gua, hadn't shown up much. He hadn't shown himself much, which made him feel a little helpless. Yang Gua had always been in the headquarters of the psionic team. Magri was arrogant, and even looked down on the psionic team. But the psionic team was backed by the government. So no matter how arrogant Magri Modric was, he couldn't directly attack a secret government department. Lord Protector, we found out that our target rented an apartment on the 5th Avenue Street. According to the residents of the apartment building we visited, the target didn't rent the apartment for himself. The neighbor said that it was an Asian who looked sick. Magri Modric raised an eyebrow. Are you sure this information is true? Not a trap? No, before we came, the Asian was already living there. So even if it is a trap, it is not for us. Investigate more carefully. Just as his men left the room, Magri Modric suddenly felt a gust of cold wind behind him. Who is it? Magri Modric suddenly turned around, but a large hand grabbed his face and covered his eyes. Mr. Magri Modric, you seem to be slacking on my mission. It seems that I need to find someone else to entrust to. Magri Modric turned pale with fright. He remembered the voice. Of course he remembered. The owner of this voice had given him nightmarish memories. Recently, he couldn't even sleep peacefully. He didn't even dare to turn off the lights. It was as if this person was observing him in the dark. Sir, I can explain. I didn't slack off. Magri Modric exclaimed. Really? But why haven't you made any progress on my mission? Chen Zhao asked in a low voice. Do you think that stalling for time is effective on me? No, I don't think so. Really? Then explain to me why you still haven't done anything. It's because that person hasn't shown himself. He's been hiding in the psionic team's headquarters, so we can't do anything. But we found out that he rented a house outside. It seems to be for an injured person. Are you planning to use that person to lure out the target? That's right. Magri Modric asked carefully. Sir, are you satisfied with this arrangement? Sure, Chen Zhao said. Give me the results as soon as possible. If you haven't completed the mission before I come to find you next time, I won't just come to talk to you. Chen Zhao instantly disappeared before Magri Modric's eyes. Magri Modric's expression was solemn. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about resisting, but Chen Zhao had left too deep an impression on him last time. That kind of terrifying power really made people unable to muster the will to resist. He didn't know about Chen Zhao's bad taste. He found that he quite liked playing this kind of mysterious role. Those fish have taken the bait, Wistana said to Yanghua. Someone's asking about the house you rented. Yes, after waiting for so long, they've finally taken the bait. They're really patient. Are you confident that you can catch all of them? Not really. Wistana shook her head. I've investigated their background. They're from Europe. Apparently, they're very famous in the spiritual world. They're called the Holy Flame Sect. Holy Flame Sect. The corner of Yanggua's eye twitched. So it's those bastards. You know them? After all, Wistana could only be considered a marginal figure in the spiritual world. Her understanding of the world had only been obtained in the past half a year. This Holy Flame Sect is a place of evil in the spiritual world. They do all kinds of dirty things. Can we deal with them? If it's the full power of the Sacred Flame Sect, our psionic ability team is still slightly weak. However, it's impossible for them to come all the way here. Otherwise, the government would definitely be furious, Yanghua said. I reckon that they've accepted some mercenary mission to find trouble with me. Can we be ruthless? Wistana asked. If we can, Yanghua said. Of course, it's best if we can leave one or two alive. Won't they take revenge? Why would they? Plus, do you think the Celestial Master sect behind me is afraid of them? Hearing Yanggua's confident reply, Wistana heaved a sigh of relief. Right now the psionic team was too weak. Everything had to be handled carefully. God King of the Nine Skies. Chapter 2102. To a psionic ability team. A mid-level religious organization, like the Sacred Flame Sect, was a colossus to them. Even now, Wistana was filled with respect for the spiritual world. Imagine being in North America, the region with the least amount of magic in the world. Yet, organizations like Chen Zhao and the Supernatural Organization had appeared. If it was Europe where magic was at its peak, how powerful would they be? Actually, Wistana still didn't have a correct understanding of the spiritual world. She always felt that Chen Zhao wasn't a top spiritualist. Because this was North America, there couldn't be a top spiritualist. Just like soccer, no one felt that there was a Mr. Soccer in the soccer world. That was Wistana's mentality. Hey Yang, you haven't contacted me for a few days. Chen Zhao called Yanghua. Chen Zhao's tone was deliberately casual, as if he didn't know the truth at all. Are you sure you need me to send you information? Even if it's meaningless information. Little Yang, don't you respect your own promises? Chen Zhao, you're the one who made things difficult for me first. Yanggua's tone was somewhat resentful. I made things difficult for you first. Don't forget, you were the one who started the bet, not me. You can't say that I made things difficult for you after you lost, right? That's not very kind of you. My promise is to do everything within my power and not violate my moral bottom line. However, your request has already touched my bottom line. Do I need to consider your bottom line when I bet with you? Do I need to check your hobbies? Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. Anyway, that's my attitude. You can order me, but you can't criticize me. Whatever. Since you're like this, our relationship ends here. Chen Zhao's tone suddenly turned cold. You don't need to give me any more information. You can do whatever you want, but traitors need to be punished. Chen Zhao, don't threaten me. Even if you don't tell me, I'll tell you anyway. With that, Yang Gua hung up. Chen Zhao was unhappy, but he wouldn't do anything. No, in fact, he'd already done that. If Yang Gua didn't have a good elder, Chen Zhao would have killed him long ago. Night. Chen Zhao stood before an apartment building. Chen Zhao subconsciously evaluated the rent of the apartment building. The rent here was quite expensive. However, Chen Zhao realized that all the residents in the building had disappeared. 50 people had gathered on the 20th floor of the apartment building. Everyone was a spiritualist. There were also spiritualists lying in ambush on every level. There were more than 80 of them. This was a trap. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. It seemed that the psionic team wasn't useless after all. After all, with the government's intelligence resources, it wasn't strange for them to discover Magri Modric's actions. In addition, Wisdana had recruited more than 80 people from the original team that only had a dozen people. It seemed that their strength had increased tremendously. Just then, Chen Zhao realized that Modric was already at the bottom of the apartment building. Chen Zhao picked up the phone and called Magri Modric. Magri Modric. Who are you? Modric looked at the unfamiliar caller ID. I am your employer. Sir, what can I do for you? Hearing that it was Chen Zhao, Modric's tone immediately changed. It's a trap. What? What do you mean? The apartment building you found is a trap. There are 50 spiritualists lying in ambush. What? Magri Modric was shocked. Then what should I do? Listen to my commands. Modric thought about it. He felt that since it was a trap, they should just retreat. There was no need to take the risk. However, Chen Zhao didn't want them to retreat. Modric didn't dare to say that either. Chen Zhao said into the phone, Management is on the 5th floor. There are surveillance cameras for the entire building. There's an enemy there. Send 2 people to climb up from the outer wall. The spiritualist in charge of surveillance isn't strong. It's not hard to deal with. Chen Zhao observed that there were many eyes floating around the spiritualist in charge of surveillance in the control room on the 5th floor. These eyes were looking at all the images. It could be seen that this spiritualist could receive all the images at the same time and process them with his brain. These eyes were also on every corridor on the 5th floor. Chen Zhao explained the situation on the 5th floor. There are no surveillance points in the ventilation ducts on the 5th floor. You can move through the ducts and enter the surveillance room directly. Modric was a bit surprised. How did Chen Zhao know the layout of the entire building? Even if he had spies in the psionic team, he shouldn't know so much, right? But Chen Zhao seemed to be the person in charge. He actually knew every single point clearly. This meant that Chen Zhao might be in the building. He also had super senses. This made Modric even more afraid to play any tricks. Chen Zhao also knew what Magri Modric had done in the past. For example, he wanted to start a fight between the supernatural organization and the psionic team. But he pretended not to know. Be it the supernatural organization or the psionic ability team, they all noticed Magri Modric's actions. Both sides tacitly pretended not to know about this matter. They didn't suspect him either. Of course, this was also because Modric's actions were too obvious and crude. He found someone to attack the psionic team, and then left a mark of the supernatural organization at the scene. No one would fall for such a crude method. The psionic team and the supernatural organization were competitors, but such a simple method of provocation couldn't be used as evidence. The person in charge of surveillance on the 5th floor was ambushed, but he still sounded the alarm before he was attacked. It's done, Chen Zhao said. Their eyes have already been taken care of, but he sounded the alarm before he was attacked. Now 3 people are coming down in the elevator. Cut the elevator rope. Boom! After a huge sound, the elevator crashed down from the top floor. Okay, have your people occupy the surveillance room, Chen Zhao said. Also, activate the building's fire system. Fire could create chaos. Sometimes water could do the same, especially when Chen Zhao controlled the power of water. The delivery elevator is working. You don't need to climb up with your legs, Chen Zhao said. Of course, if you think this is a warm-up before the battle, pretend I didn't say anything. Chapter 2103. Damn it! How did the Sacred Fire sect know so much about our setup? Wistana's face was filled with anger. She thought her setup was perfect. She had thought of every detail. Even her subordinates might not have known everything. However, the result made her both shocked and angry. All of her arrangements had lost their effect. Instead, the Sacred Fire sect used her setup to find loopholes. News came from outside that the psionic team had lost a few people. Although it was only a few people, it made their arrangement even more flawed. Is there a mole among us? Wistana asked with a serious expression. Wistana, it's not a mole. Someone on the other side has super perception, Yonggwa said. Yonggwa said, as long as it's within a certain range, almost no action can escape the enemy's eyes. At this time, we can no longer rely on our previous arrangements to win. We can only change our strategy at any time. This way, even if the enemy has super perception, they won't be able to react immediately. But what should we do? Wistana was troubled. Blitz looked at Yonggwa. Yang, can you temporarily take over command? Yonggwa thought about it and nodded. I'll try. Yang, I'm counting on you. This started because of me. I'm responsible, Yonggwa said seriously. First, the enemy activated the sprinkler system. Is this to create chaos? Blitz asked. It could also be a spiritualist with water magic or water talent. It's best if we send a water or ice spiritualist to deal with it, Yonggwa said. Why not the earth element? That should be able to restrain the enemy's water element. My grandmaster once said that in a disadvantageous situation, we don't need to turn defeat into victory. Instead, we need to ensure that we don't lose in every detail, Yonggwa said. They heard Yonggwa say that his grandmaster had said that. No one had any objections. In the water element's home field, even if it is restrained by the earth element, the power that the earth element can display in this building is still very limited. So in the end, we might not be able to defeat the enemy's water element spiritualist. If we also send one or a few water element spiritualists, in a situation where both sides have the home field advantage, the enemy's home field advantage will be gone. At least we can guarantee that we won't lose. Everyone heard this, and immediately felt that it made sense. After all, these were the words of Yonggwa's grandmaster. Even if Zhang Tianyi didn't show his face, Yonggwa's name was still on his lips. This was enough to intimidate all the spiritualists present. The other side doesn't have the advantage in numbers. Even if their average individual strength is stronger than ours, it doesn't mean that they will definitely win. Our advantage in numbers means that we have more flexibility in our arrangements. They actually gave up on the defensive formation and scattered all of their members. To Chen Zhao's surprise, the commander was now Yonggwa. On top of that, his commands coincidentally restrained his advantage as a spectator. It had to be said that Yonggwa's command was just right. The chaotic and collapsing situation was once again stabilized by Yonggwa. Yonggwa's commands were of a high standard. In a situation where they were completely unaware of the Sacred Flame sect's strength, they had actually managed to arrange everything so neatly. Moreover, Yonggwa's arrangements were very flexible. After giving up the advantage of the terrain, he made full use of his familiarity with the terrain. When one of the front lines was in danger, the other front lines could provide support at any time. The smartest thing about Yonggwa was that he didn't seek victory, but stability. As long as the situation was stabilized, the Sacred Flame sect would be helpless. After all, as long as the police or firefighters arrived, the Sacred Flame sect would have to retreat. Unless the Sacred Flame sect wanted to cross their bottom line. Chen Zhao was considering if he should attack in secret. He was confident that he could do some things for the Sacred Flame sect while hiding his identity. However, the risk of doing so was very high. Once his identity was exposed, it would mean that the supernatural organization would start a war. No matter how weak the psionic team was, they were still a subordinate department of the government. Chen Zhao was the kind of person who didn't want to fight openly, but wanted to scheme behind the scenes. In all kinds of entertainment, he would be the worst type. Of course, reality wasn't like that. The little demon in Chen Zhao's heart started to stir. Should I interfere or not? Just then, a few water spiritualists from the Sacred Flame sect met the water spiritualists from the psionic team. The two sides fought back and forth. There might be a difference in strength. However, because both sides had the home advantage, they were very difficult to deal with. Moreover, water wasn't a magic system that could be decided in a short period of time. As a result, the people from the Sacred Flame sect were dragged there. This also meant that the Sacred Flame sect, who didn't have an advantage in numbers, had even fewer people. The psionic team's strength was uneven, but there were still some experts. These experts had a clear goal too. They wanted to find the lone Sacred Flame sect member to fight. If the Sacred Flame sect's spiritualist was weaker, then he would take the opportunity to get rid of him and weaken his opponent's abilities. If the spiritualist was strong, then they would stall for time. The weaker people from the psionic team formed teams and moved together. Chen Zhao was a bystander, so he could see the whole situation clearly. But Modric didn't know. It was like a real-time strategy game. Both sides' maps were dark. On one side, there was a master strategist like Yang Guo, who could command on the spot. On the other side, Modric clearly wasn't as good. Modric's only hope was Chen Zhao. But even if Chen Zhao commanded on the spot, even if he opened the entire map, he still didn't know how to change the situation. Because Chen Zhao wasn't a strategist. In the past few battles with the supernatural organization, Chen Zhao found his own opponents. His subordinates were given to West to command. Modric kept asking on the phone what to do next. "You piece of trash," Chen Zhao yelled at Modric. "I already told you the current situation. Can't you think of a solution yourself?" "You piece of trash," Chen Zhao yelled at Modric over the phone. "I already told you the current situation. Can't you think of a solution yourself?" Modric was depressed. "You piece of trash," he yelled at Modric. "I already told you the current situation. Can't you think of a solution yourself?" Modric was very depressed. Weren't they having a good conversation just now? Why did they suddenly stop giving him orders? Chapter 2104. As expected, after Chen Zhao gave them some pointers, as expected, Modric brought his men towards Wistana. However, such an obvious weakness, how could Yang Guo, as a tactical expert, not take advantage of it? So Wistana was bait. When Modric brought his men to Wistana's front, Wistana's eyes lit up. The spiritualists who were originally scattered around immediately surrounded him. Moreover, Wistana was always protected by a tank. This caused Modric and his men to be unable to capture Wistana in an instant. "You are Modric, the guardian of the Sacred Flame sect, the person in charge of Norway?" Yang Guo looked at Modric. "You should know who I am, so I won't introduce myself. Now tell me, who asked you to deal with me?" "You think I'll tell you?" Magri sneered. "Are you still going to put up a stubborn resistance?" Yang Guo smiled at Modric. "I don't need to fight you to the death. I just need to wait for the mortals to arrive. Are you trying to use ordinary people to threaten us?" "Of course not. That's our bottom line. But it's also your bottom line. If you fight us in front of a large number of ordinary people, you'll be the ones in trouble. So this battle can only be said to be a draw." Just as Modric had said, this was their common bottom line, a line that no one could cross. Yang Guo was silent for a moment. He looked up at Modric. "You might not be able to buy that much time." "Why? Do you think you can deal with us in such a short time?" "We can't do it." "Then how did you make it so that I couldn't buy that much time?" "Because the place you are in right now is my senior brother's bedroom. He doesn't like people disturbing him," Yang Guo said. "Senior?" Modric suddenly had a bad feeling. Then a terrifying pressure came from behind him. Modric turned his head abruptly and saw an Asian man standing behind him. The Asian was staring at Modric with a cold gaze. It was none other than Yi Fengmiao, whom Chen Zhao had defeated earlier. After being defeated, Yi Fengmiao's strength increased by leaps and bounds. Right now, Yi Fengmiao was truly the number one of his generation. Previously, he had already caused some seniors to be unable to match him. Right now, he could make most of the old seniors feel helpless. When Modric sensed the terrifying aura from Yi Fengmiao, he even thought of the person who brought him terrifying memories. "Go! Retreat!" Modric made a prompt decision, but Yi Fengmiao simply raised her hand and made a grabbing motion. Immortal binding rope. In an instant, Magri Modric, and a dozen of his men were immediately restrained. It was too fast, so fast that it was suffocating. Magri Modric was definitely not a weakling. There was no lack of experts among his subordinates. But he couldn't even block a single attack from Yi Fengmiao. Wistana and the psionic team members at the scene all sucked in a cold breath. Too strong. This man called Yi Fengmiao was simply too strong. Wistana looked at Yi Fengmiao. If he joined the psionic team, he wondered if he could fight against Chen Zhao. Wistana finally felt the possibility of defeating Chen Zhao from Yi Fengmiao. Even if Yi Fengmiao alone wasn't enough, the psionic team might be enough. Yang, take them away. Also, find someone to help me fix this place tomorrow. Got it. Yang shrugged. To be honest, Yi Fengmiao's advancement was too terrifying. If it were him just now, he definitely wouldn't be any better than Magri Modric. This was the difference in levels. Any schemes would be meaningless. Mr. Yi, thank you for your help, Wistana said respectfully. You're welcome. Yang is my junior. He's also taking care of me in LA these days. I can do what I can. Yang sensed Wistana's intentions and immediately said, Wistana, let's take them back first. Yang clearly didn't want Yi Fengmiao to participate in this messy situation. Right now, Magri Modric's face was ashen. He didn't think that he would be defeated in a magical desert like North America. But he also felt that it was natural. After all, the people who captured him were from the Eastern Dragon Tiger Mountain Celestial Masters sect. That was a top-notch sect and inheritance with a long history. Therefore, it was natural that their disciples were strong. The only thing that they couldn't accept was the fact that they had lost instantly. Yi Fengmiao gave him a very similar feeling to that person, that faintly discernible oppressive aura, as well as an unimaginable power. They weren't enemies that could win with numbers. Magri Modric couldn't imagine what kind of power was needed to defeat him. There were still many monsters in the world that made him tremble. For example, the ridiculously strong supernatural organization. There were enemies in that organization that he couldn't do anything about. Now there were a few more. Bring them all back to the headquarters, Yang said. Chen Zhao was very helpless. When he saw Yi Fengmiao attack, he couldn't do anything anymore. He didn't care about Yi Fengmiao's power. But if he attacked, Yi Fengmiao wasn't weak either. He could definitely recognize his power. It would be even more troublesome then. Fortunately, Chen Zhao didn't need to worry that Magri would confess to him. After all, Magri didn't know his identity either. This made Chen Zhao feel relieved. If they really fought, he would definitely win. But his power would definitely make the government wary. In the end, he wouldn't be as relaxed as he was now. Either he would be the government's dog, or he would be monitored by the government. After all, Chen Zhao was a walking nuclear warhead now. Nevertheless, Chen Zhao still followed the psionic team until they returned to the headquarters. Only then did Chen Zhao give up. Chen Zhao didn't want to get too close to the psionic team's headquarters. After all, he caused a ruckus last time. The psionic team might have made some arrangements against him. These arrangements might not be able to do anything to him. However, Chen Zhao might be exposed. Chen Zhao started to regret asking Magri Modric. At the same time, he felt that he'd made a strategic mistake. He'd underestimated the psionic team and Yang's abilities. Of course, there was no point in regretting now. Just then, Chen Zhao received an unfamiliar call. Subconsciously, he felt that it was Wistana calling to test him. Chapter 2105. Hello, who is it? Chen Zhao answered. Mr. Chen, where are you now? Who are you? Mr. Chen, can't you recognize my voice? Miss Wistana? Chen Zhao asked, knowing the answer. Mr. Chen, do you know that we caught people from the Holy Fire sect? Oh, Chen Zhao's answer was still flat. Mr. Chen, you don't seem surprised at all. You know that the Holy Fire sect is in LA? Do you think I can't know or shouldn't know? Do you think that the supernatural organization's intelligence is inferior to yours? Mr. Chen, I'll get straight to the point. The people we caught said that the supernatural organization hired them. Oh, I see. I'll go to your headquarters now. If you want to confront me, I'll be happy to stand in front of the judge. Wistana wasn't really confident. Although Magri claimed that the supernatural organization hired them, She wasn't sure if Magri was trying to get away. But she wasn't sure if Magri Modric was purposely accusing the supernatural organization in order to escape. Wistana thought that she was in the right, so she wasn't afraid to confront Chen Zhao. She thought that she was in the right, so she wasn't afraid to confront Chen Zhao. Even if it was proven that Chen Zhao and the supernatural organization had nothing to do with it, it had nothing to do with them. Chen Zhao didn't know what Magri Modric had said. However, he definitely couldn't back down now. Chen Zhao went home and drove a car to the headquarters of the psionic team. Many people in the team glared at Chen Zhao. After all, Chen Zhao had given them quite a bit of mental and physical trauma last time. Blitz walked up to Chen Zhao. His emotions couldn't be seen from his expression. However, he definitely didn't like Chen Zhao. "Mr. Chen, please follow me." Chen Zhao was brought to a round room. Everyone in the room was the backbone of the psionic team. Yang Guo was also included. Yang Guo immediately tensed up. He wasn't sure if Chen Zhao would expose him in front of everyone, no matter how unwilling he was at the time. After all, he had been a traitor once. However, Chen Zhao clearly didn't plan on exposing him. Magri Modric and a few of his men were tied up tightly. Other than their heads, the rest of their bodies were like mummies. Chen Zhao glanced at Magri Modric. "Mr. Chen, do you know them?" "He knows." Chen Zhao pointed at Magri Modric. "They're the ones who said the supernatural organization hired them?" "I'm the one you hired." One of Modric's men immediately shouted. "Mr. Chen, do you have any explanation now?" Wistana looked at him proudly. Chen Zhao ignored Wistana's question and walked up to the Holy Fire Sect disciple. "You said I hired you, right?" Chen Zhao realized that they didn't recognize him at all. They just wanted to bite. "That's right, I remember you. It's you." Hiss. Chen Zhao stretched out his hand and tore the disciple in half. "What are you doing?" Everyone cried out in alarm and got into a fighting stance. "Mr. Chen, you better give me a clear explanation. Otherwise, I can only assume that you're trying to silence me." Chen Zhao didn't care about the attitude of the people around him. He walked up to the second Sacred Fire Order follower. "You also said I hired you?" That's right. It's you." The second Sacred Fire Order follower gave the same answer after a slight hesitation. "Stop." Yang Guo charged at Chen Zhao, trying to stop him from killing. But Chen Zhao turned around instantly and grabbed Yang Guo's arm. Then he slapped Yang Guo's chin. Yang Guo spun a few times in the air and landed heavily on the ground. He was heavily injured. Chen Zhao turned around and grabbed the disciple again. Hiss, another was dismembered. Chen Zhao walked up to the third disciple. "You also said I hired you?" "No, I didn't. The Guardian told us that. He said that if we were captured, we should let the psionic power team and the supernatural organization fight. That way, we would have a chance to escape," the third Holy Fire Sect disciple said in fear. Only then did Chen Zhao let the disciple go. He turned to Wistana. "Miss Wistana, if you really want to fight, just say it now. I can kill you and everyone here legitimately. I'm tired of this way of interaction. Mr. Chen, we were tricked by them too." "Tricked? It's such an obvious lie. You're telling me you were tricked? Do you think I'm easy to bully?" Wistana didn't expect Chen Zhao to be so tough. "Did I make you think this way somehow?" Chen Zhao walked toward Wistana. Seeing Chen Zhao's fierce look, a few spiritualists immediately went up to stop him. But Chen Zhao swept across with a leg sweep. Chen Zhao sent everyone flying. Wistana's pupils contracted. She wasn't worried about her own safety. She was shocked that Chen Zhao was still so strong. Everyone present was the backbone of the psionic team. Every one of them was very strong. But before Chen Zhao, they were as weak as babies. Wistana stood before Chen Zhao. She could feel the pressure from Chen Zhao. "Do you like to use this method to test my bottom line?" Chen Zhao asked. "Mr. Chen, this is a misunderstanding." Slap. Chen Zhao slapped Wistana. "Sorry, this is also a misunderstanding." Wistana covered her face and stared at Chen Zhao angrily. Chen Zhao glanced at the patterns peeking out from Wistana's sleeves. He put his hand on Wistana's shoulder. "Be careful. Your secret technique might not be effective." Wistana's body trembled visibly. Chen Zhao's words had many meanings. It was precisely this kind of unclear words that made people think a lot more. Chen Zhao walked up to Modric. Modric was also very regretful. He should have thought of this long ago. The supernatural organization was so arrogant and crazy. Without such a strong leader, how could they have such strong subordinates? She'd actually tried to drag him down. She was asking for trouble. You're the one who wants to drag me down with such a childish lie. Chen Zhao looked down at Magri Modric condescendingly. Sir, I'm sorry. No need to apologize. I don't accept apologies. Chen Zhao suddenly grabbed Magri's neck. No one could stop Chen Zhao's violent actions. Stop Chen Zhao from silencing them. Chapter 2106. Just like that, Chen Zhao killed them in front of everyone. No one could stop him. Chen Zhao acted as if he'd done something insignificant. He did it so casually. The psionic team members along the way didn't stop Chen Zhao. After joining, they'd all heard that Chen Zhao was a fierce person. The second batch was clearly not as strong as the first. They knew how strong the previous members were. Even the previous members had been taught a lesson by Chen Zhao. They didn't think they could fight against Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao strolled away, as if there was no one around him. Chen Zhao didn't expect them to have no suspicions. In fact, no matter what decision or action Chen Zhao made, they would be suspicious. Even if Chen Zhao kept Magri Modric, wouldn't they be suspicious? That was impossible, since they were enemies. Even if Chen Zhao didn't do anything, they would think that he was guilty. Rather than that, he might as well do whatever he wanted. The next day, Chen Zhao received an unexpected call. It was from Leong. Mr. Chen, come to the headquarters of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. Chen Zhao frowned. He really wasn't familiar with Leong. They weren't even friends. As the former head of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department, Chen Zhao and Leong had a conflict before. However, after Leong left his post and was promoted, their relationship miraculously improved. Although Chen Zhao didn't have direct contact with Leong, they still had some business cooperation. Everyone's identity and status were different, so they had different ways of thinking. Leong was the best example of this. As the famous saying went, there were no eternal friends in the world, only eternal interests. Of course, Chen Zhao and Leong weren't friends, but that didn't stop them from being allies. Leong used his position to provide Chen Zhao with a lot of useful information. However, Chen Zhao didn't understand why Leong called him to the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. To make peace with Mansari? He should be very clear that this was simply impossible. Because to put it bluntly, it was a power struggle between them. Mansari wanted to control the supernatural organization, and Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao obviously wanted the department to be independent. The two had irreconcilable conflicts. Unless Mansari could advance in a short time like Leong otherwise, they would never be able to resolve their conflict peacefully. Therefore, there was no point in trying to make peace. Chen Zhao wouldn't back down, even if it was Leong's request. Furthermore, Leong wasn't shameless enough to force him to back down. However, he still had to give them permission to go to the anti-terrorism department. Leong had given him face. Whether Leong would give him face or not depended on Leong's thoughts. If Leong thought that he could control Chen Zhao after being promoted, Chen Zhao didn't mind teaching him a lesson. Chen Zhao went to the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. Most of the people here were strangers. It was obvious that Mansari had cleaned up the place after he took over. He even helped his own people get promoted. The current Anti-Terrorism Security Department had already undergone a major change. Chen Zhao walked past the office area and knocked on an office door. Come in. He heard Leong's voice. When Chen Zhao pushed the door open, he saw Leon and Mansari sitting inside. But because of where they were sitting, Chen Zhao didn't plan to continue. Chen Zhao stood there with his hands behind his back. Mr. Chen, aren't you going to sit? Mansari smiled. He'd purposely arranged this seat. Leong was his superior in name. Although he wasn't directly in charge, he still couldn't offend him. His seat was similar to Leong's. They were both slightly higher than the third seat. The remaining seat was naturally for Chen Zhao, who'd arrived last. Even if it was just a small trick, Mansari would still feel happy. This kind of behavior seems very childish. But it was also Mansari's test for Chen Zhao. Leong was Mansari's superior in name. Mansari was also Chen Zhao's superior in name. However, Mansari clearly didn't want an uncontrollable subordinate like Chen Zhao. That was why their conflict was so intense. Chen Zhao glanced at Mansari casually. Then he stood there, not planning to sit down. Mr. Leon, if you're here to make peace with us, then forget about it. I think you should understand where our conflict comes from. I'm not here to mediate. I'm not interested in your relationship, but I hope you can cooperate sincerely this time. I also think we should be more sincere, Mansari said. Both sides should show their sincerity. Chen Zhao stood there and didn't speak. He watched the two put on a show. Mansari and Leong both felt embarrassed. Only then did they stop. Chen, we've already found out that there's a huge threat in the Bermuda Triangle. It's a legendary demon. There's a large number of demons there. This isn't just a problem of the ocean. It's a problem of the entire country. So I hope you can let go of your prejudice. I think Minister Mansari doesn't need me. He's formed his own team, and it's quite strong. With his team, he probably won't need the supernatural organization. Chen, I know about Mansari's team. They're not strong. They can only handle small things at most. Big things like this still need the supernatural organization. Of course, it can also be two teams working together, Mansari added. I think they can create different sparks when they work together. I'm not interested. Chen Zhao rejected without hesitation. Why? Mansari asked sarcastically. Are you afraid that the supernatural organization will be overshadowed by a new psionic team? No matter what you say, the supernatural organization will never work together with the psionic team. That's my principle. What if I say it's an order? Leong threatened. Bang! Chen Zhao slammed his palms on the table before Leong. Mr. Leong, please repeat what you just said. Leong's face twitched. Forgive me, Chen. I apologize for what I said earlier. I forgive you, Chen Zhao snorted. Chen Zhao was also reminding him not to forget why he could level up. If Chen Zhao and the supernatural organization hadn't pulled him back at the last moment, Leong wouldn't have been able to level up. Now Leong would be lucky if he wasn't killed like a bug, let alone leveling up. I still say the same thing. The supernatural organization will never work together with the psionic team. Not in the past, not now, and not in the future. Chapter 2107. Let's not talk about whether the psionic team would stab us in the back. Let's talk about who contributed more and who contributed less. How would we distribute the merits? That's why I'm so against it. You're all under the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. Mansari's tone turned cold. Sure, we can work together, but I want the right to command and have absolute decision-making power. Chen Zhao looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao looked at the devil is beside you. 02106 Leon's little abacus. Please wait a moment. After the content is .d. Please refresh the page to get the latest. Chapter 2108. Portia was speechless about Chen Zhao's lifestyle. Chen Zhao spent most of his time in the sun. Occasionally, she heard that he received a call from a client and went to see them. However, Chen Zhao had never brought her to see a client. Nevertheless, she knew that Chen Zhao charged at least $1 million each time. Chen Zhao didn't care about this at all. To Chen Zhao, these numbers that could drive Portia crazy weren't even as much as his income for a day of doing nothing. The rest of the time, Chen Zhao basically brought his kids out to shop. Because it was almost Christmas, Chen Zhao and his family had many things to buy. Feilai's coastal rescue team's work had become easier. Because of the cold weather, the number of tourists at Angel Beach decreased sharply. Of course, this also reduced the number of missions for the coastal rescue team. Most people could enjoy a happy Christmas in peace. So Feilai also went on a shopping spree. Portia's biggest daily workload wasn't shopping with the family. Instead, she was packing up the things they bought in the living room. After lunch, Chen Zhao's family enjoyed a peaceful and satisfying time. Portia, has Zephyr contacted you recently? Chen Zhao asked. She's called me once. Portia took some time to reply. Boss, if Zephyr runs into trouble, will you help? If it's convenient, Chen Zhao said. After all, It's hard to find an assistant as excellent as her. Boss, don't you think it's too much to say that in front of me? If you complain less during work, you'll be pretty good too. But as your assistant, my work is like hard labor every day. But Zephyr never complains. She's an assassin. She might be thinking about how to kill you. Portia didn't mind making fun of Zephyr's past identity at all. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. Zephyr's past career was much more noble than an assassin's. It could even be said that she maintained world peace. Zephyr was cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. On the surface, she kept everyone at arm's length, including Chen Zhao. She was only slightly nicer to Portia. But in reality, Zephyr was a person filled with a sense of justice. Moreover, Zephyr was very attentive. She had a completely different personality from the bulky Portia. Of course, this was also related to Fervora's past career. As a dragon slayer, if one was not careful and patient enough, the success or failure of an operation would not be the only thing that mattered. At the same time, he could also put himself and his teammates in danger. The knocks on the door woke Morocco-Bic up. He had been on the run for a month. Ever since he was released, he had been constantly being hunted down. He didn't know who was chasing after him. However, he was very clear about one thing. If he was caught, he would be dead. Morocco-Bic immediately escaped from the back door of the room. He's in the motel room. This was also where Morocco Piccolo stayed most of the time. But just as he walked out of the back door, he heard footsteps. Morocco Piccolo didn't even think as he charged into the dense forest behind him. Morocco-Bic turned around and looked at the people behind him. It was obvious that these people were members of a gang. At that moment, Morocco-Bic suddenly started to miss his life in prison. However, he suddenly thought of what happened in Los Angeles' 7th prison and suddenly lost his thoughts. Recently, horrible things had been happening in 7th prison. Morocco-Bic didn't know who was chasing after him. He had offended too many people outside. Just like that, Morocco-Bic ran for his life with his chaotic thoughts. But he was too tired. He didn't eat anything today. Yesterday, he went to a Burger King and only ate a leftover burger. This was the daily life of a desperate man like him. He couldn't even compare to a homeless person. Really, a desperate man wasn't the kind of person who could go around freely like in the movies. Most of the desperate men were in a precarious situation and lived in constant fear. Most of the time, they didn't even dare to go under the sun. And Morocco-Bic didn't just eat little, he didn't even have time to sleep. In the past week, he didn't sleep more than 12 hours. In other words, on average, he slept less than 2 hours a day. Morocco-Bic's stamina started to run out. The footsteps behind him were getting closer and closer, but Morocco-Bic's consciousness was getting blurry. Finally, Morocco-Bic felt a strong and powerful body pushing him to the ground. It was a bearded man who was even bigger than him. Then Morocco-Bic fainted. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself lying on the cold and wet floor. The room was a bit empty. There was only one table, and a big bald man was sitting in front of it, wolfing down food. Morocco-Bic recognized the man. The underground king of L.A., King Morgary of the Wild Boar. Morocco-Bic had seen Morgary before, but Morgary had never seen him before. Morocco-Bic knew very well that he had no contact with King Morgary of the Wild Boar. So he didn't understand why he had been captured by this man. Morgary stuffed a 3-layered beef burger into his mouth, chewed a few times and swallowed. Then he stood up and walked to Morocco-Bic. "Damn bastard, do you know how much manpower I spent to catch you? How much time I wasted? You made me the underground king of L.A., lose face. I actually used 23 days to catch you." Morocco-Bic was so scared that he moved to the corner. "Mr. Morgary, I didn't offend you. I was asked by someone to do it. I promised my friend that I would let him see you in 3 days. But he came back from a trip abroad, and he still hasn't seen you. You've made my promise worthless," Morgary said angrily. Morocco-Bic started to worry again. Who wanted to capture him? At this moment, the door to the room opened and a figure walked in. Morocco-Bic's terrified emotions suddenly calmed down. Why is it him? Chen Zhao, his former cellmate. Chen Zhao's arrival caused Morgary to go up and give him a warm hug. Chen Zhao and Morgary almost never contacted each other. Chen Zhao and Morguri would only send each other a message during holidays. In Morguri's heart, Chen Zhao was the person he trusted the most. Perhaps the only person he could trust. He also kept a good distance. They were both silently watching each other's growth and personal development. Morguri, next time greet me differently. Chapter 2109. Chen. No, Mr. Chen, it's me, Morocco Piccolo. Do you remember me? It's me. Chen Zhao turned his head to look at Morocco Piccolo. I remember, how could I not remember? I remember people who owe me money very clearly. I paid your bail before. And I said that it's not money for you. It's a loan. You have to pay me back. But it's been so long and you haven't paid me back. You even went to jail during your bail period, so the bail was confiscated. Morocco Piccolo's eyes were wide open. Morocco Piccolo's face was full of awkwardness. Chen, leave it to me. Morguri walked up to Morocco Piccolo. Do you want to feed the sharks or the crocodiles? Morguri wasn't someone who only knew how to fight and kill. He'd experienced the ups and downs of life. So his life experience had given him the wisdom to deal with all kinds of things. Chen Zhao clearly didn't plan to really kill Morocco Piccolo. However, threats were clearly very effective against people like Morocco Piccolo. Criminals like Morocco Piccolo were very dangerous. On the one hand, they were constantly on the edge of courting death, constantly testing the waters. On the other hand, they were also filled with fear of death. Chen Zhao didn't have to reason with them or talk about morality. He just had to ask them if they wanted to live or die. This was more effective than other methods. Boss Morguri, Morocco Piccolo said fearfully. I just owe you a little money. It's not just a little, Chen Zhao said. $50,000 isn't a small amount for anyone. I'll think of a way. I'll definitely pay you back. Then how do you plan to pay me back? Is it just a verbal promise? Chen Zhao asked unconcerned. No. I have a way. I can definitely pay you back. A smile appeared on Chen Zhao's face. How many people have you made this promise to? How about this? My request isn't that high. Help me and I'll forget about the money. Morocco Piccolo's heart jumped. I understand. Mr. Chen, who do you want me to kill? Or help you transport goods? Chen Zhao's face darkened. I don't need you to do that. Mr. Chen, don't worry. I understand. Even if I get caught, I won't betray you, Morocco Piccolo said, acting smart. I said it's not about that, Chen Zhao said with a dark expression. Morguri put his arm on Morocco Bic's shoulder. Let him finish. Don't try to act smart. Yes. Morocco Bic wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. The pressure Morguri gave him was too great. This was a supervillain who killed without batting an eye. Sure enough, even if he had taught Morocco Bic a lesson in prison, he would still be able to defeat him. It was not as intimidating as Morguri. Go back to prison, Chen Zhao said. More accurately, go back to prison 7. Morocco Piccolo almost spat out blood. The 7th prison? Stop joking. Even though he used to be a frequent visitor of the 7th prison. But it didn't mean that he treated the 7th prison as his own nest. More and more people were dying there recently, and the frequency was increasing. Moreover, Morocco Piccolo remembered that night clearly. Mr. Chen, I can agree to anything. But this, I don't want to go back there even if I die. You know what's there, the White Nightmare. That's the White Nightmare. Morocco Piccolo remembered it very clearly. If Chen Zhao wasn't there that night, he'd be dead for sure. Morguri didn't know what was wrong with the 7th prison. If Chen Zhao wanted, he could arrange for someone to go in. Of course, since Chen Zhao wanted Morocco Piccolo to go in, he had to go. Even if he didn't want to, he had to go. Morguri, give me some alone time with him. Okay, call me if you need anything. Morguri turned and left quickly. The moment Morguri left, Chen Zhao suddenly grabbed Morocco Piccolo's neck. I'm not asking for your opinion. I'm ordering you. A wave of dark lava appeared behind Chen Zhao. If you refuse my request, then you can go to hell right now. Instantly, Morocco Piccolo felt fear he'd never felt before. It was a shock from both his body and mind. He knew that Chen Zhao wasn't an ordinary person. After all, Chen Zhao had chased the White Nightmare away with his bare hands last time. Now he finally saw Chen Zhao's true terror. Who do you think is scarier, me or the seventh prison? An evil smile appeared on Chen Zhao's face. I'll go. Very good. Suddenly, Chen Zhao put away that creepy smile and the dark lava. Morocco Piccolo almost thought that spring had come. Chen Zhao put Morocco Piccolo down and patted his shoulder. Don't worry, I'll protect you. The warden of that prison is my friend. You'll enjoy 5-star treatment there. Morocco Piccolo wanted to cry. Even 10-star treatment was useless in that damn place. Of course, compared to the terror Chen Zhao had shown just now, that place didn't seem that scary anymore. Chen Zhao took out a bottle. It was filled with a thick and turbid liquid. Morocco Piccolo felt his hair stand on end just by looking at it. He didn't know what was in it. If you encounter danger, drink this. It can temporarily give you some inhuman power. Chen Zhao didn't tell him about the side effects. If Morocco Piccolo was a good person, Chen Zhao didn't mind giving him some benefits. For example, strengthening potions. But Morocco Piccolo wasn't a good person. In fact, he was an extremely evil person. All the bad habits of humans could be found in him. If he obtained inhuman power, who knew what crimes he would commit? So it was best to give him this. It was the crazy corpse demon's saliva that Chen Zhao had Hellies concoct. Anyway, its origin was disgusting. After people took it, they could obtain great power in a short time. But the side effect was that they would have to lie in bed for a month. Can I not take it? Morocco Piccolo wasn't blind. How could he not see how terrifying and supernatural this thing was? It definitely wasn't some nectar. If you're not afraid of being pressed to the bed like last time when you encountered the white nightmare, I don't mind. But I can't bring it in. You don't have to worry about that. I'll think of something. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor, that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.